All right, it is 1729 Central at Central Library. Howdy. Oh, tired. My body hurts. Falling apart. Beginning backup audio, 1730, Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Candidate Forum, Central Library. All right. Howdy. Pardon me. Okay.
Save us spot.
Did you guys bring some tough questions for them? Awesome. Get them to make some promises that they'll have to keep.
I'm definitely putting enough steps in for the month.
Well, I'm surprised. Yeah, this is the one. Well, in either case, between, I like the FDA.
So who's hosting?
The pigs that are same person. Same system. On my order.
And we don't have any for the second.
No, I'll just set up my stuff. At least I know where he's sitting, you know?
They caught me right when the page goes out, so I can get back in. We're here last night, right? Duh. You just don't change again. Or at least put them where you think they should go, and then I'll help. Yeah.
So like the camera probably got released. I really just want to drop credit card and then just grab it.
66204 Jennifer with 3.
Yes.
Saved?
I mean,
Okay.
still worth it. Face 3 items that I need. You're not talking about the handles, reds, and stuff. A good set of lenses you need.
You want to go back? She wanted to go back and see this stuff.
I know, but.
Oh, well, you guys were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Is this supposed to be a questionnaire or what is this?
So,
Well, you were interrupting.
Oh, okay, that's what's.
Are you recording you?
I am not affiliated with the newspaper in any way, but I am recording. Oh, this isn't mine. I don't know whose this is. I record on this.
I see.
And I'll set it up probably in front of me once they start going. But
At least this time they let them.
a lot of people want to record, so
Because
the more the merrier.
the other two events, they let anybody else talk or ask questions. Okay.
Well, the Post is broadcasting, it's a Facebook Live event, so.
And then I was gonna put one around. Hey, Catherine, do you know if we have? We used to have like a bajillion of these. Do you know if we have more?
The next card right here, y'all are sitting.
In there? Oh, okay.
If you have questions.
Do you want one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no,
For like really your wallpapers?
no, but I have to wanted to see if this is a fantastic site. I will say
Leah, I should say hello by name. I know you by now.
you know my name, right?
Absolutely, you're Leah. Leah
Okay,
Wayne.
good.
Um,
I was gonna say, come on.
I have
It's
a
our last
card
name.
ready for the sheriff. So if you want me to hang on to it for later, I
Will
can,
you?
or I can just.
Yeah, I don't want to lose track.
Okay, perfect. Hey, Juliana, thank you. Hello.
I'm going back to my desk.
I don't really know.
What the best place this one?
Yeah.
I won't bump into it.
Yeah, I think it's just because other people can buy it, but I don't know that we really. Like, if we do this, it will be in the way. No.
That would sort of block me a little bit, unless I go.
Would it block you?
Yeah, I can put it up higher, then it might be in the way of the people sitting in behind me.
Is this fine?
That's fine, I think, because I'm gonna have it right about here. So.
Okay. No, thank you though.
If that is the posts, then do what you need.
Oh yeah, no.
Um,
I just
If it's another attendee, then I'd like to be equal
no.
with
This is
them.
this is for our
For your backup?
Backup.
Cool.
But
And do what you need. I don't want to inconvenience your
Exactly how
procedures at all.
we want to put this. That's gonna. We'll just go like this. And then people get the hint.
I think. So you guys going right up until 8 tonight? With the 2 rounds? Cool. I'm sitting in the front row. Period. They are going to start with the sheriffs tonight, and then the DAs. Yep. I'll be careful not to bump into it. You. You're good. Doing good. You one of the candidates? You're not Doug. Oh.
I'm on Byron's team.
Huh?
Doug's out there, out in front.
Schmoozing? Making connections?
Yeah. Are you one of the moderators, or are you?
I am unrelated to the Johnson County Post. I'm just a citizen, taxpayer, resident.
Oh, okay,
So
awesome. Well, welcome. Hey, Israel, how you doing?
there's a few of us, I guess, that want to record. So
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for being here and showing the interest. So, yeah, I retired from the sheriff's office a couple years ago.
Ah, cool.
So, 28-year career.
I would like to see better access to body cams. I know Kansas actually has a pretty restrictive body cam law.
Yeah, you know, the sheriff's office, they've had body cams. I still say even
Yeah.
though I'm retired there. They've had body cams for a while.
No, I don't just mean wearing them. I mean the public being able to review them.
Oh, review and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to
Maybe-
see what their current policy
Yeah,
is.
maybe some time limit based things, like after so many months or weeks, that like everything becomes public.
Yeah.
You know, I can understand maybe having to delay a little while, but not super long. And
Sure.
you
Yeah,
know,
well, you know, with technology evolving so much, those policies should be changing.
Yeah.
On a regular basis. So.
yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do I did you get your sign? I dropped it off at the house. Yeah. It's been a while. I didn't know you lived in That's why you said yeah, always hit the red lights. And by the time I get to 35, it takes forever. Center Street. Yeah, the same store.
I walked
Walk anymore, let me know.
I did see that, just, this
I always forget. I totally myself that. I told myself this morning I did that. I had a request in order. I get I saw the light off. Yes. So I had some very exciting. I put it three of today. What's that? What's your?
Yeah, that's that.
I've got a neighbor coming, just so you know, and he might bring his wife. I don't know if they're both going to sit together. I've got a neighbor coming.
Okay.
He's going to sit next to me. I don't know if he's bringing his wife or not.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just want to let you know before they get here. This one's looking like it might be more packed than yesterday. Yesterday was Board of County Commissioners. They've done lots of these forums. So
Yeah, it was really.
BOCC was yesterday. They've done about six or seven state legislature events.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
Yeah.
I work 40 hours a week, so
Yeah. I had to really struggle if I'm going to come to this one or not because I had other things that I was going to do today, but
yeah.
decided to be here. In the room, it does get busy.
Who are you with?
Just with me.
Just
Not-
yourself?
Yep.
You do after you eat?
I go home and I sleep. I try to rest.
You're gonna take really good notes.
I am going to take notes. Yes. Talk to my neighbors in my neighborhood. I post video online.
Okay.
Sometimes I have questions for the candidates. Depends on what they say and
Love it.
if it's good or bad. Yes. Yeah. There's pros and cons to both of them. I don't know. I think this is one of the races that is not so. I don't feel quite as strong in this one as other ones, but I'll still be here. I'll still listen to them. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm grateful Cal made it came light because then it made people be aware of the sheriff race.
Yeah.
Highlighted that.
Yeah. Do all counties elect their sheriff in Kansas, or is it just JoCo and the four big ones?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think there ought to be more elected positions, that's for sure. I know there's quite a few in our county government that other counties have elected, like treasurer and stuff. And JoCo does not get to elect our treasurer.
I did not. Is it appointed?
It's appointed. It's appointed by the commission, I believe. And I actually talked to him at one point, and he said that's because if you elect it, you'll get somebody who's not very good at being a treasurer, they're not as educated.
Just like with any other office.
And that may be true, but you get somebody who's accountable to the people.
Oh, yeah.
And I see that as actually more important than being smart. And I may be alone. I may be alone in that. Other people would disagree with me, but accountability, at the end of the day, I feel is more important than intelligence or
I agree.
a doctorate. Because they have staff to double check them, So
I did not know that.
the high ups in the county will set policies that affects us. And for that reason, I think they ought to be accountable. But
Now, is
just
it,
one person.
But is one person then appoint, or is it a group?
I think it's the Board of County Commissioners who does it. Yeah, the group of commissioners. 7 of them plus Mike Kelly, I believe. So,
Okay.
I mean, you could say, okay, that makes them accountable because there's a level there, but it's one step removed from the public.
Yeah. So I know the city of Mission Hills, it's a, if they vote, the city votes their treasurer.
Joella, good evening. You're Joella, no? Not Joella?
Do you know a Joella?
I thought she was Joella.
It's like, is she Joella's here?
Or no, maybe I'm getting that wrong.
Sir, she didn't give you her name.
I am, thank you.
You coming around already for questions? Maybe not?
They did it at the end, at least for the DH last time during the primaries.
Huh.
That's when you can submit your questions. They'll come around and pick up the cards.
About 5 minutes, so.
But they may do it differently.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And I've dropped myself.
Closer.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I thought magnets would be smart, but I guess not. I'll figure it out by next year.
Hey, you.
Hey, oh, Jennifer, how are you? Oh, somebody ran these two.
I had a neighbor coming who's going to sit next to me. I thought. I haven't seen him yet though.
I've been out.
I'll be taking questions. Billy, thank you. I was gonna come for you, I promise.
I trust you. I did. Yes, you got it. I thought I had a neighbor coming. I'm really hoping.
This is good, right?
You know, this late in the game,
Or
they're
two
not.
neighbors.
They're not.
You waiting on two?
It was two.
Okay.
I hate to say.
No big deal.
Sorry. I was gonna ask.
Very fast. Very fast. I'll sit here. Somebody else can.
Somebody else can do one more. Nobody wants it. There's Stacy.
Well, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post, featuring candidates vying for Johnson County Sheriff. This is the first of two forums tonight. Of course, after this will be District Attorney. We'll give the two candidates up here a chance to introduce themselves shortly, but first, My name is Kyle Palmer. I'm the editor of the Johnson County Post, and I'm honored to be the moderator for this last night of forums, the last of 8 nights that we have hosted over the last month. The smiles on my staff's faces back in the very palpable right now. We consider events like this our specialty. We've hosted such forums nearly every year since the Post's founding almost 15 years ago, in one guise or another. They allow our readers and residents of Johnson County direct access to the people who would hold elected office and govern your communities. The Post prides itself on giving you fact-based, informative coverage of your local communities that you can't find anywhere else. And local elections, we feel, are a perfect time to demonstrate that service. If you are a subscriber to the Post, I want to thank you. It's your support that allows us to put on events like this and pay for staff to stay after hours and all the equipment we use. Most of our revenue indeed comes from our more than 7,500 paying subscribers. If you do not currently subscribe but want to check us out and consider joining our growing community, go to johnsoncountypost.com and see what we're all about. Big thanks to Johnson County Library, who has co-sponsored all 8 nights of forums that we've done this election cycle. This last one at Central Resource Library in Overland Park. They did the very same thing last year, and we want to give a special thanks to Ashley Fick, the coordinator at the library that we work with. She has been here every night as well, helping us set up and coordinate and find locations that work for us. So we want to thank her most directly. And of course, we're doing all this ahead of early voting starting on Saturday, October 19th. So we want to thank the folks at the library as well for being a host site for many voting polling places as well going into election season. We are also live streaming this event tonight on the Post Facebook page, as we plan to do or have done with the other forums that we have done so far over the last month. This forum will be posted on our Facebook page. You can go back and watch it, or people who are not here, they can watch it later at any point between now and November 5th. And of course, I want to thank the candidates for being here tonight. It's a busy time of year and busy chapter in your lives. Running for office is time-consuming and labor-intensive. You are seeking a position that will directly impact our readers and clearly has much interest in the Johnson County community. And we appreciate you giving some of your time tonight to let these people know where you stand on the issues affecting this race. Let's briefly lay out the format for this forum, giving the candidates a chance to introduce themselves. This forum features the 2 candidates vying for Johnson County Sheriff. As I said, for tonight's forum, each candidate will be given 1 minute to make a brief opening statement and introduce themselves. Following that, we'll then ask a series of questions based in part on reader input. I do have some scripted questions that are based on various emails we've gotten over the past couple of months asking readers for their feedback. But also, you may notice Leah's already collecting questions that are on the index card that you may have found on your seat. If you have a burning question you would like to ask, you can let her know, or Lucy Crispin is over here on this side. So we have various staff members. Just raise your index card and they will come find you. They'll pass those up to me. If I see questions that have kind of a similar theme, I'll try to ask it. Or if there's a question that maybe sticks out from another issue that has not been asked, I might also ask that one as well. So we do want some audience participation too. I will say if the candidate mentions the opponent by name in their response, or it's clear they're referencing the other candidate, we may give that other candidate a chance for a 30-second rebuttal. That's done as a courtesy. Of course, there are only 2 candidates here, so we will get through plenty of issues, but if there's a chance for a rebuttal, I will make sure to give that. Again, for the candidates, Leah is also timekeeping tonight, so I think she will settle into one place eventually, but she'll be walking around the room too. But she'll hold up a yellow card for a 30-second warning and a red card meaning your time is up. That just is done as a courtesy. We don't cut your microphone, just make sure that that allows you to wrap up your thoughts. Also, Juliana Garcia is working the camera tonight. Kaylee McLaughlin is monitoring the live stream. I mentioned Lucy Crispin. Andrew Gog is here as well. It's a full staff party tonight, so I want to thank them for their help. Also, just a note about audience decorum, both for this and the next forum. We have candidates up here representing different views on some high-profile issues that in some cases I imagine have the potential to be engender strong emotion. We have a lot of people in the crowd tonight who care very deeply about this race, so please respect these candidates' time, their willingness to share their stances in a public forum. With that being said, we'll ask the audience members try to refrain from speaking over candidates or having audible outbursts in the crowd, showing signs or doing other things that might distract candidates while they're up here. I want to make it a safe and productive space both for audience members and candidates as well. Well, all that aside, let's jump right into this. And so before I began speaking, we flipped a coin, and so Byron won but deferred to Doug. So Doug's going to go first on opening statements, and I will say Byron will go first on closing statements. And so that's the order. We'll flip-flop back and forth when we get to questions, so you're all going to get plenty of chances to go first. But the first opening statement falls to Doug Bedford. You'll each get 1 minute to introduce yourselves. And so let's begin with opening statements, starting with Doug Bedford.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Doug Bedford. I'm a candidate for sheriff here in Johnson County. I want to thank everyone for coming out. This is a very, very important race here in Johnson County. The sheriff's office and the sheriff, they have jurisdiction over the entire county. You start getting into certain areas in Johnson County, people don't even know that we have a sheriff's office. They don't even know that's part of the ballot. So seeing all of you here, that's very refreshing. A little bit about me, I grew up in Johnson County. I'm from here. My wife, she's in the front row. We've been married for 28 years. We have 2 kids, both graduated from Kansas State University. I have 29 years law enforcement experience, 26 of that at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. I was the undersheriff, the number 2 person for 4.5 years. I was also in the military for 8 years, active duty as a United States Navy SEAL with 3 overseas deployments. What I'm going to bring is trust, teamwork, and transparency back to the Sheriff's Office so we can work together with city agencies and make Johnson County safer.
We'll give the next opening statement to Byron Roberson. Byron, if you want to go now.
Hello there. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am Byron Roberson. I am the current Chief of Police of the Prairie Village Police Department. I'm also a proud veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps serving in Desert Storm. I am the current Vice President for the Johnson County Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. I sit on several different boards, but 2 of significance is the Johnson County Criminal Justice Advisory Council. I sit on that board. I also sit on the Safe Home Domestic Violence Board. I am also a proud graduate of the FBI National Academy. It is a senior leadership course that senior command staff go to. I am a graduate of the Jackson State University with a bachelor's in science, and I am a graduate of the University of Central Missouri with a master's in criminal justice. I believe that I am the right one to be able to bring new change and good leadership to the Johnson County Sheriff's Office.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, both for your opening statements. Let's dive into some questions. I already have some excellent questions from the audience up here. It's just the 2 of you, so we're going to get a chance to get through a lot of issues over the next 30 to 40 minutes, if not a little bit longer, before we start the DA form at 7. So the order will flop now to Byron Roberson to begin this next question. We did receive this question before our primary form, but it's worth revisiting now that we have a general election contest. The reader at that time asked, what is the #1 public safety issue in Johnson County for you? And how would you address this issue if elected? You'll each get 60 seconds to respond to this. So the biggest public safety issue in your estimation, Byron Roberson.
So the #1 problem that is going on in Johnson County, because I am a current police chief, I see this every day. We have rampant crime that is going on, especially property crime. Our violent crime numbers are going down. We've been doing really good of keeping those numbers pretty low. But our violent crime has gone up. And our violent crime, if not addressed, attributes to violent crime eventually. So what I plan on doing is I plan on using our resources for the Johnson County Sheriff's Office to help those agencies that are especially short manpower, especially on the northeast end of Johnson County. The car thieves, the burglars, all of those things contribute to the community not feeling safe. That is something that the Johnson County Sheriff's Office can assist those agencies to do a better job of putting those criminals in jail.
The question now over to Doug Bedford. What is the #1 public safety issue in Johnson County in your estimation? 60 seconds.
I think one of the biggest issues that we have to face is the drug problem, the narcotics problem. I think everything starts with drugs. What you're going to do is have the small crimes. They're going to be going to your neighborhoods. They're going to be checking your car doors. They're going to try to look for that crime of opportunity. While I was the undersheriff, we created the Northeast Kansas Drug Task Force. There's 17 police agencies in Johnson County, and only 1 participates in the Drug Task Force, and that's Shawnee PD. What we need to do is have more collaboration with the city agencies. If we all come together, we can then work on the drug issues, and I think a lot of the other crimes are then going to dissolve also in that regard. One of the things that I also want to implement is an old program. It's called the T100. That was the radio frequency. That's where the sheriff's office can transport inmates or arrestees from Prairie Village, from Leawood, from Overland Park, transport them to the jail. That way, the officers from those agencies, if the arrestee can be transported, they can immediately get back on the streets in their cities.
Byron, you alluded specifically to the difference between violent and property crime. Doug, you talked about drug crimes, and that obviously can affect other types of crime. We do have a question from the audience, so I'll ask it now. Kind of hits upon this. It says, describe your philosophy about the difference between protecting people and protecting property. What is the difference you see? This one falls to Doug first, 60 seconds.
People is where it starts. You have to protect the citizens of Johnson County. That's what I will do as the sheriff, and that's what every law enforcement agency in Johnson County should strive to do. In doing that, in protecting people, by, again, if we have the T100 unit, we can get officers in the city agencies back on their city streets faster and quicker after they've made an arrest. The sheriff's office can be there for anything that they need to do. It comes down to staffing like it does with any agency. But if the sheriff's office is contacted and said, and if it's a city agency, if Prairie Village calls and says, hey, we have this taking place, we have rampant crime taking place, the sheriff's office can send units there to assist. That's what the sheriff's office does. There's more than 500 sworn officers at the sheriff's office to assist city agencies. One of the areas they could do that is the drug task force. They could look, they could go to these areas, and they could stop the crime that's taking place.
Question over to Byron Roberson from the audience. Describe your philosophy about the difference between protecting people and protecting property.
Well, absolutely, the protection of people has to come first. But that is done, as Prairie Village Police Chief, we work with the community. We have an open line of communication. So we also make sure that our officers are out there giving them the information about what is going on. We're very active on our social media, so we're making sure that people know when there's crimes going on that they could be subjected to. Also, we make sure that there's open lines of communication from the citizens to the people that are on the ground. We make sure that our officers are out there, they're targeting the areas that they need to be. We use our data analysis to make sure that they are put in the right place. Technology. We also spend a lot of money on technology, making sure that those cameras and traffic cameras and license plate readers are being used to the best of their ability to put officers in the place where these crimes are happening.
Another question from the audience. Here's a question I was going to ask about budget and spending, but it kind of fits along the same thing. We're talking about how you decide to deploy resources, what crimes do you want to prioritize fighting. We do have a question from the audience. How have you reduced the crime rate? And how do you determine what crimes to focus budget dollars on? So maybe focus on the second half of that question. How will you make budgetary decisions based on the types of crimes you want to prioritize? This starts with Byron first, 60 seconds.
Yes, in Prairie Village, we spend a lot of time and money on just that, on trying to fight crime and trying to figure out ways in which we can do it better. Last year, I obtained the largest law enforcement infrastructure grant anywhere in Johnson County, $635,000 that I got from the federal government to put in license plate readers and traffic cameras at every intersection. This would have took us 10 years to complete, but we did it in 1 year. It does two things. It saves the taxpayers money, and it also catches criminals. Every day, we are getting notified of people that are being caught with these apparatus that we have in our city. When a person comes through the city and they have a warrant or they have a stolen car, it automatically sends a notification to every officer that someone just came across 75 State Line. It gives a picture of the vehicle, and they're able to direct their resources to catch the bad guys.
Question coming over to Doug Bedford, same one. How will you determine what crimes to focus budget dollars on? Also, I guess as a former member of the Sheriff's Department, they also ask, how have you reduced the crime rate in your particular roles in the past, but how would you determine what crimes to focus your budget dollars on?
Well, again, one of the biggest things you have to look at is citizen safety. And that's what we want to do, and we want to do that as a group. The best thing that you can do if you are fighting any crime is to work in a collaboration and work in a teamwork. I was a former Navy SEAL, I mentioned that earlier. It comes down to teamwork. You have to be willing to sit at the table. You have to get everybody working together. If that's county government, if it's city police agencies, whatever the case. Again, the sheriff's office has a special operations command center that was opened up while I was there as the undersheriff, and now it's been enhanced even more so since after I retired. What they have there is they're able to view cameras that are throughout the county. They're able to review the data that's coming in from license plate readers that my opponent mentioned earlier. What you have to do though is make sure that that information is used. Make sure the information just doesn't go into a database and then it's forgotten. Ultimately, what that's going to come down to is everybody working together on a single goal, which is stopping crime in Johnson County.
One reader wrote before this via email, being a good steward of taxpayer money is very important. According to public records, again, this is the emailer writing, the budget for the sheriff's office since 2017 has increased by approximately $45 million. If elected, do you anticipate maintaining that level of spending? What will you do to ensure residents that you are running the sheriff's office in the most efficient manner possible while still being effective in carrying out some of the crime-fighting operations that both of you have mentioned? So a broader budgetary question. We'll start with Doug Bedford first, 60 seconds.
Public safety is one of the most important aspects of any government budget. It doesn't matter what agency. If you're talking about county government, if you're talking about a city government, public safety is going to be one of the biggest things that we have to look at. What we have to do is at the sheriff's office is conduct a staffing analysis. Make sure that everybody is in the right place where they need to be. Regarding overtime, a cost analysis we could do there, look at the non-statutory functions that are being done at the sheriff's office. Some things that are done at the sheriff's office are mandated by Kansas state statute. The things that aren't mandated, maybe we could reduce them, maybe we could move some personnel around, but ultimately what it comes down to with the budget, you also have to look at, there's not 100 people lining up for one position to be a law enforcement officer anymore. And so what has to happen is the budget, the salaries are going to go up. And what we need to do at the sheriff's office is continue to look at those budgets, do the staffing analysis, and have the constraints with anything that we need.
Same question over to Byron Roberson. Again, the reader pointing out that the sheriff's office budget has grown in recent years. If elected, do you anticipate maintaining that level of spending? What will you do to ensure residents that you're running the sheriff's office in the most efficient manner possible? 60 seconds.
Well, at Prairie Village, I have been in charge of the budget for the last 4 years. I have been under budget every year. I give money back to the city every year because we are efficiently using those funds that we are given. And that means that it's back to taxpayers' pockets. The budget is made up like a pie, like a cake. It has a couple pieces to it. The piece that you have that doesn't change much is personnel. Personnel cost is gonna be what it's gonna be. You have to make sure that you're keeping your personnel competitively paid, their benefits are good, and that they are competitive amongst their other peers in the county. That's one piece that really doesn't change. Once you set that kind of just moves by itself. The other part is the infrastructure, bullets, bandages and clothes and equipment, vehicles, things like that. Those things you can sometimes change. You can sometimes reduce some of those costs by using different things like EV cars and other vehicles that are able to be, we're able to save some cost savings that way.
We have a lot of questions about staffing and recruitment from the audience, and so let's move on to that topic. This question will start with Byron. The Sheriff's Office has dealt with the challenge of trying to fill dozens of vacant positions and also retain staff. In 2022, for instance, the County Commission approved a budget increase for the Sheriff's Office that boosted hourly pay for deputies in an attempt to attract more applicants. In that year, the staff turnover rate, not counting retirements, was 15%, which was above the target of 11% set that year. That's just an example. To deal with these shortfalls in recent years, the Sheriff's Office has had to pay current staff overtime. At least one of you has mentioned that or alluded to it. So several readers, both in the room and then also emailing us before this forum, say they want to know what your plans are to adequately pay the Sheriff's Department, pay Sheriff's Office employees competitive salaries. And we'll start with Byron Roberson first, 60 seconds.
So pay is very important. Like I was talking about with creating the budget. You have personnel costs, then you have also infrastructure and capital improvements. Then you also have ways in which you can increase money into the budget by applying for grants and things like that. But the personnel costs are important. What you have to understand is you have to make sure that they are being paid competitive. They are being paid competitive, sometimes not just comparing what other agencies are paying, but also comparing to what the outside commerce is paying. We lose people to Garmin, we lose people to Honeywell. We have to compete with those places that we normally wouldn't have to compete for in the past. So that is something that we have to continue to do. You have to make sure that their benefits are good. You have to make sure that the people know that they are valued. You have to keep them on track also. That's the reason why the budget has gone up so much, is because over the last several years, they have not given the Sheriff's Department employees the raises that they need to stay competitive. That's why you have to do it so much at the end.
And Doug Bedford, people want to know your plans for adequately staffing the Sheriff's Department and paying Sheriff's Office employees competitive salaries.
While I was there as the undersheriff, I sat through those meetings. We had a $90 million budget. I sat through the meetings on the budget, so I've had those discussions with the fiscal division at the sheriff's office, and then also the county budget office and the Board of County Commission regarding that. So with over 700 employees, 83% of the sheriff's office budget is actually for staffing. What we need to look at, the numbers, as it was mentioned a few minutes ago, the numbers of the vacancies at the sheriff's office, they were a little bit higher. Right now, the numbers are, there's 15 open deputy positions at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. They currently now have an attrition rate of less than 5%. And the reason why is because of the significant pay raise that happened in 2023. That's what you have to do. Pay the comparative or the competitive salaries so you don't lose your employees. It's my understanding that they're looking at hiring another big group. Possibly by the end of the year, there will be 0 vacancies at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. I will continue to work to have those competitive salaries so that we are strong in the market.
We have several questions from the audience regarding staffing, staff development, so we're gonna ping pong back and forth on these. We'll start with Doug first. Question from the audience: what is your experience with providing professional development for your colleagues, and how is that important for creating future leaders within the department? So your experience leading professional development and what that was, Doug. 60 seconds.
Well, it's very important. You typically want your leader to come from within. That's where your supervisors are going to come from. If you have a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major at the agency, you're going to bring them up and hopefully groom them, teach them what it needs to be to lead people. At the sheriff's office, there are a number of different things that they can do. They have leadership programs. Anyone that is aspiring to be a leader, they can attend these leadership programs. And so what that does is that puts them in these roles. They have a capstone project when they're in there. And what that will do is they can then go in and say, hey, this is a project that we worked on as a group, and they can work on those leadership positions. That can also be there's 12 different divisions at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and of those 12 different divisions, you are going to have the lead, so to speak, in each unit. If you're a training officer, all you're going to be doing is kind of grooming, or you are working on those leadership skills that'll enhance your career as you go on.
Same question to Byron Roberson: your experience providing professional development for your colleagues. 60 seconds.
So training is extremely important in the Prairie Village Police Department. We encourage our officers to seek out, and we also have a professional development sergeant that gives them training that they may want. We put them in their career goals. If you want to be a dare officer, we send you to things that are going to move towards that. If you want to be a patrol officer that's interdiction for drugs, we'll send you to training for that. Development is key. If you don't give people development, they will be stagnant, and they will soon want to leave and go somewhere else because they don't have the ability to have that training. The Johnson County Sheriff's Office does not train outside of its own agency. We train everywhere, all over the United States. They do most all of their training is done in-house, so it's the only perspective of the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, not the perspective of other professionals outside of the business. We send people all the way to Northwestern University. We send them to the FBI National Academy. We send them to other perspectives. You have to have that.
A couple of questions alluding to staff morale. This will start with Byron. One questioner asks, what will you do to inspire Sheriff's Office staff? Another person asks, what will you do in the first 90 days to influence the Sheriff's Department? So maybe take both of those in turn, but 60 seconds talk about inspiring staff, motivating them, especially at the beginning after you're elected.
So to inspire the people in the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, you have to do one thing first. You have to tell them what you need them to do. The problem with the Johnson County Sheriff's Office is that they've had a leader for the last 8 years that has not told them the plan. They had no plan. They had no direction. They were like a ship that left port and didn't know where they were going. They didn't have a person at the helm that was telling them, this is where we're gonna go. This is where I want this agency to be. So that is first and foremost what you have to do as a leader. You have to communicate your vision to everyone all the way down to the lowest level. That's the way that's the way you can create a professional organization that can grow.
Same question over to Doug Bedford, again, kind of a two-parter, but what will you do to inspire the sheriff's office? What does your first 90 days look like doing that and influencing your department?
Well, one of the first things that I want to do is talk to as many people as I can. They have to know what my leadership is going to be like. So many of them know me anyway. Again, I was there for 26 years. I was a former undersheriff. I have an unbelievable working relationship with deputies all the way up through the rank of major. Let me emphasize, the sheriff's office is not broken. The men and women at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office do an amazing job. Again, whenever I come in as the leader, then that's what we are going to do, is change the direction that we're going to go through leadership. One of the first things I'm going to do, empower the supervisors. If you are a supervisor and you are empowered to make a decision, empower the deputies. If you're a deputy and you can make a decision, that will give people buy-in. They will have a vested interest in anything that they do if they know that, hey, I can make a decision and I'm not going to get yelled at for making that decision. That's going to take time, and it may take more than 90 days. But once you change that mindset where people have a good working environment where they can make decisions, you're going to have a successful organization.
Continuing along this theme, we'll start with Doug on this question from the audience. How important is diversity in the workforce, and how would you improve or discourage it? That's this audience member's question. So we'll start with Doug here. Diversity in the sheriff's office's workforce, 60 seconds.
I think it's very important. It's very important in any environment. It doesn't matter if you're talking the sheriff's office, if you're talking a business structure, whatever the case may be. What you need to have is community involvement. If you have a group of people from the community, an enhancement group where you can meet with them not just once a year, you want to meet with them at least once a month, if not more so, and ask them, hey, what do we need to do for the diversity within our organization? There's a lot of minorities at the sheriff's office right now, but it's unfortunate that that's even a topic of discussion. We should just say, hey, you know what, we're hiring the best people and we have everybody at this organization, period. And that's what it's going to come down to. If you work with the community and you then say, hey, what can we do to hire more minorities, to get involved? And that's going to be a number of different programs that we can do. But if you make that happen through a community policing unit, all that will do is enhance the agency and enhance recruitment.
Same question to Byron Roberson. How important is diversity in the workforce, and how would you improve or discourage it, in the words of this audience member?
Diversity is extremely important. It is important because you can't have a top-notch professional organization without diversity in your workforce. But you can't depend on that it's going to happen because you have a policy on it. You can't depend on it that it's going to happen because you told your people that that's what you want. You have to be diligent. You have to go out and find those people. Minorities, and especially women, you have to go out and find those people and recruit them. If you don't, they will not come. Because law enforcement as a whole is generally white males that have dominated that workforce. So a lot of people do not feel comfortable. They do not feel that they will be welcomed. You have to go out and make sure that they know that this is an environment that you will be welcomed, because we cannot be the best professional organization unless we have diversity in the workforce.
And the last question regarding staffing, before we move on to other topics, this again from the audience as well. What is your process for vetting applicants for positions with the office? Are there any red flags that you would look for that would exclude an appointment? So we talked a lot about needing to expand the workforce, needing to find more and recruit more sheriff's office workers, but this questioner takes it from a different angle. Is there anything that would raise your red flags to the point where you would not want to hire somebody? What would be your process for vetting applicants? We'll start with Byron Roberson, 60 seconds.
We are very diligent in who we hire at the Prairie Village Police Department. I do have the luxury that I get to talk to every single one of them. I talk to every single person that is hired with my police department. We also have a very diligent way of going about making sure that we have the right people. When a person comes into the Prairie Village Police Department, they sit down with an investigator and they turn over, they ask for their social media. And then they ask them, we want you to open up your social media. We're doing that because, not because we're trying to pry into their personal life, but we want to see what kind of person they were before they came and wanted to be a police officer. A lot of people have lives on the outside that come out in their social media. That's one way. But we also make sure that we are going to talk to their neighbors. We're going to talk to their friends. We're going to talk to their coworkers. We want to make sure that you are a good human being and that you are going to treat people like human beings. That is the most important thing that you can do to be a police officer.
And again, the final question here regarding staffing goes back to Doug Bedford. What is your process for vetting applicants? Are there any red flags that would make you exclude an applicant?
Oh, the personnel division at the sheriff's office does an amazing job. And what they will do is then look at an applicant, and there are quite a few, and this is civilian and sworn. They will look at the applicant and then they will go through that. They're going to, there's a polygraph test that's given, there's a psychological exam, a physical fitness exam, a background check. They're gonna talk to your neighbors. They wanna find out who this person is, what they've done, where he or she have been throughout their life. There's been a change. A few years ago, they made a change in the narcotics because, for lack of better terms, you have to keep up with the times. If somebody, back whenever I started my law enforcement career in 1987, if you had smoked marijuana, then your career was done. You had no chance. And now that has been changed and it's been modified. And so the personnel division would come whenever I was there as the undersheriff. They would come and say, hey, look, we're thinking about modifying it because this is what other agencies across the nation are doing. You have to be willing to change. If you're willing to change, you will then find the good applicants and you are going to be able to get the great employees.
Moving on to another topic, we've gotten several comments from readers. They're all along the same lines. So I'll move on to this topic now, and we'll start with Doug Bedford. The order falls to you. A reader did send us this email, quote, firearms are now the leading cause of death for children and teens in America. This, again, reader talking as the mother of a young daughter, this issue is very important to me, as it is to many other parents in Johnson County. If elected sheriff, what policies will you enact or support within the confines of your office to help curb gun violence in our community and ensure the safety of all our children? I will also note we've got several comments from the audience asking about your position on what they refer to as common sense gun control, whether you have a stance on that or not, or agree with that framing of the issue. But again, the way this reader phrased it, what policies will you enact or support within the confines of your office to help curb gun violence in our community and ensure the safety of children? We'll start with Doug Bedford first, 60 seconds.
Yeah, one of the biggest things you have to do is with education. If you're talking gun safety, if you're talking narcotics use or drug use, and it starts at a young age and you have to talk about the education with the kids. And that's what I would want to do. I want to send people into as many schools as we can in Johnson County to say, hey, look, these are the worries, these are the concerns, these are the safety factors you need to have with drugs, with guns, with things like that. Another aspect that we have is educating the parents too, because they need to make sure that they put their weapons away. They make sure that everything is locked up safe, because that's typically how it will happen. Mom or dad, brother, whatever the case, left their firearm out, and then that's when tragedy struck. We can also then work with the government. You can get gun locks. We will issue those to, or not even issue them, we will give them to people. And so then that way, and again, it would just come down to talking to people, having classes. The sheriff's office currently does that. They have gun safety classes, anything they can do to help the citizens and educate the citizens of Johnson County.
Byron Roberson, the same question to you, again from a reader who emailed. If elected sheriff, what policies will you enact or support within the confines of your office to help curb gun violence in our community and ensure the safety of all children?
So I am the only candidate here that is endorsed by Moms Demand Action for a Gun Sense candidate, because I support the initiatives that they are doing, especially in Topeka and also in DC. It is not to take guns away. I am a gun owner. I am a military person, so I'm not against guns, but I am against guns being possessed by people that shouldn't possess them. I am against people who have guns that leave them unlocked and leave them to be obtained by a young person. That is why we have the problem that we do, is because we don't have any rules with our guns. We have to make sure that we are supporting organizations like Mom Demand Action, like I did last year. I gave Senate testimony in Topeka against a bill that was going to handcuff police departments to enforce federal gun laws. We have to support things like that in legislation.
I will just allow Doug a chance, maybe 30 seconds, to respond to the particular notion about the endorsement of Mom's Demand, how that redounds to you.
Well, one of the things, I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I'm again, a former Navy SEAL. I've been in in law enforcement for 29 years. I am very pro Second Amendment, and what it comes down to is education. I have a number of guns at my house. I have them locked up safely in my house. I would hope that other people are doing the same. That isn't always the case, which is probably why we even got this question. And so it comes down to safety, it comes down to education, anything we can do to help the citizens and keep them safe.
You were rebutting, so the next question starts with Byron. Kind of along those lines about safe storage access, gun access is a significant factor often in suicides as well. As the sheriff of Kansas's most populous county, if you choose, you could be a voice for change when it comes to state laws regarding such things as maybe gun safety at home, safe storage locks, red flag laws such as that. What, if any, issues related to gun safety would you be willing to advocate for in Topeka? We'll start 60 seconds with Byron Roberson.
I would definitely be willing to advocate for red flag laws, because that is something that lets us know when someone shouldn't have a gun. There should be a waiting period. There's no good reason why a person should not have to wait a certain period of time until they are made sure that we have vetted them and made sure that they are able to have a gun. There are many things in place that we have that our mental health that is involved in, that advocate for this, that they need to have a waiting period. They need to have time to make sure that this person should have a gun. And I'm not against people having guns, but I am about vetting and making sure people have the right to have the gun. And red flag laws is one of those ways that we can make sure that we keep our community safe with that.
And the question over to Doug Bedford, what, if any, issues related to gun safety would you be willing to advocate for in Topeka, again, as the sheriff of Kansas's most populous county?
Again, I am a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. And so I am not in favor of taking anyone's guns. I will not do that, and that's what we have to do. There has to be gun safety. Whenever you start enacting some of the laws, the danger that you get into is how will those laws be enforced? And it doesn't matter if you're talking guns, if you're talking drugs, whatever the case may be, you have to look at the overall picture and make sure that somebody cannot take advantage of somebody. Someone cannot violate somebody's Second Amendment right, their constitutional rights, if it comes down to whatever the case may be. And that's one of the biggest things that I would be concerned of in that regard. It will start with safety. It starts with education. It starts with getting out. It starts at a young age. We need to start at a young age whenever the kids are in elementary school and talk about the guns. And we need to then talk and do the same thing with drugs. Any of those issues that we can address at a young age and continue that education even through someone being an adult will only keep Johnson County safe.
We've got several reader questions and comments regarding Johnson County's process for investigating officer or law enforcement involved shootings. Many of these readers expressed sentiments similar to this emailer who told the Post that they perceive the process as, in their words, too cozy with police. I will say the Sheriff's Office does not have a direct role in overseeing the Officer Involved Critical Incident Team, or OCIT, but as one of the county's top law enforcement officials, your assessment of that process very well could matter in how investigations in the future are conducted. You may have weight about how or what, if any, changes would be made to that process. Do you think OCIT currently accomplishes its stated mission of conducting impartial and transparent investigations? Do you see the need for any changes or improvements to the process? We'll start with Doug Bedford, 60 seconds.
Anytime there's a family or there's anyone involved where they are working with the OCID, there's been a tragedy involved. And so I feel for that family, I feel for the people that are involved. What I like about the OCID team, which is the team that will come in and investigate it, one of the key things you need to do in any key investigation, especially where there's a shooting, is remove the agency that was involved. Because if you remove them, then hopefully that will remove the bias that may be, if there is any, in that investigation. We need to make sure that we have highly qualified investigators on this OSIT team. I was never on that team. I was a lieutenant over our investigations division at the sheriff's office, but as the undersheriff or any other role, I wasn't involved or on the team. Make sure that each one of the investigators on there are highly qualified, they have yearly training, and then if you look at the core principles that I want to run on is trust, teamwork, and transparency through my campaign, we can then make everything better and the citizens will trust the law enforcement with an OSIT team.
And I'll ask you a follow-up before I jump to Byron, Doug. Maybe describe in more detail how transparent you think these investigations should be. What type of information and investigative records do you think should be made available to the general public, as well as, and it's a difference, the families of people involved or shot and killed by law enforcement? I know they are certainly different from the general public, but maybe get more specific about how transparent you think these investigations should be. And that's for you first, and then yeah, I'll ask these questions of Byron too.
Okay. Well, one of the things, if you look at a body camera, I think that there should be a disclosure. You should be able to see that, and that should be done sooner than later. And that's going to have to be in the constraints, working with the district attorney's office, working in the constraints of Kansas law to make sure you can legally disclose or you can make that viewable by people. The family can probably see a lot more of it for the general public. I think if you would do things like that, the transparency piece, what you're going to do is get more trust in law enforcement, what's taking place. And the reason why is because people can then say if the family, they can possibly get closure. The media, you know, because a lot of times as soon as people hear there's a shooting, then they say, oh my gosh, this person did this or this agency did that. That can maybe clear up any misconceptions that are out there. And so what you have to have, again, is proper training for the investigators and then the transparency of the investigation, get the reports done as quickly as possible so there's not a time drag or it's not dragging on for the family or for the entire investigation itself.
So the original question back to Byron Roberson now, do you think OSIT, again, Officer Involved Critical Incident Investigation Team, do you think that currently accomplishes its stated mission of conducting impartial and transparent investigations? Do you see the need for any changes or improvements to the process? Again, with the caveat, the Sheriff's Office doesn't necessarily directly oversee OSIT, but as the top law enforcement officer, what you say may have extra weight. 60 seconds.
So the OSIT is a very good organization. It's a very transparent organization. The investigators that are on OSIT are the best investigators in the county. They investigate major crimes. And a lot of them are also a part of the Metro Squad investigative team that investigates murders, robberies, and everything else all over the Metro Kansas City area. They are the best investigators that we have. And it is impartial because it does not, wherever the incident occurs, that agency is excluded. Everyone else is brought in. I have a commander that is part of the OSIT. He is a very good commander. He is a very smart investigator, and that's what you have to have on that organization. Are there things that we can do better? Sure. We always can do things better. I've already collaborated with the KBI and talked to them about how we can do things better by maybe collaboration on training.
Again, the follow-up to that I asked Doug, how transparent should these investigations be? What type of information should be available, made available to the general public as well as the families of people involved in these incidents or shot and killed by law enforcement? I mean, I will say, you have to point out, and you've talked about this, that you yourself, a member of the Prairie Village Police Department, you did fatally shoot a woman in 2010 as a member of the Prairie Village Police SWAT team. Of course, the investigation after that cleared you and the other officers involved. Does that experience lend any weight to how you think about this issue? And again, specifically, what should be made transparent and when during these investigations?
Yes, since you brought it up, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting in 2010. It is something that could happen to any police officer when we put on our badge and we put on our vest and our equipment every day. It's a reality. This is not something that I wanted to happen. It is something that I was put in a situation where it was either my life or their life. So I will not apologize for that. I am sorry for that family, but that is a situation that I was put in with a person that had a serious mental illness. And that is something that we have to address as well. Mental illness, that is the large percentage of the persons that are involved in officer-involved shootings have mental illness. So it is a serious problem. And I do believe that there are some times that some videos should be released, but that is also sometimes out of our hands. A lot of times it is the district attorney, or it is a higher court that is not allowing sometimes that video to be put out.
Involved with these types of investigations often are body camera footage. One questioner from the audience says current Kansas law considers body camera footage a criminal investigative record, therefore body camera footage is exempt from the Kansas Open Records Act and does not have to be released to the public. So oftentimes when the public does get access to that information or those records, it is often maybe after a lawsuit or because the agency did voluntarily release it. Do you agree with state statute? We'll start with Byron on this one and then move to Doug. Do you agree with the state statute? Where do you stand on the release of body camera footage? When and how should it happen? We'll start with Byron, 60 seconds.
I believe that body camera footage should be released as soon as possible, if it is something that we are legally able to do. We have every police officer in Prairie Village has a body camera. When they have contact with someone, the body camera is on. It saves lives. It also protects the officer as much as it protects the person that they're encountering. So I do believe that for public transparency, for public trust, yes, we should release the body cam as soon as possible, but it is not an absolute. It is not every time that you're going to be able to release the body camera, and people have to understand that.
And the question to Doug Bedford as well, do you agree with state statute that shields often body camera footage? Where do you stand on the release of body camera footage? How and when should it happen during the course of such investigations?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think you have to look at what's allowed by Kansas law, and then you have to look and work in collaboration with the district attorney's office. A lot of times what needs to happen, while I was there as an undersheriff, then there was a shooting that took place. And what ultimately happened is we brought the family in, and we allowed the family to view the video. And the reason why is the family needed closure. The family needed something. We were able to stop the video. They didn't see everything that took place, but there would always be the questions. Did the person really have a gun? Did the person really have a knife? What did they have? What led up to this? Was there life-saving measures after the incident took place? Sometimes the videos, the body cameras, or even an in-car video, they can give that family, they can give these community the closure that they need. That could even be for the officer that's involved. Because sometimes they need that peace of mind, and that way people would know, hey, this person didn't do something egregious. They actually did something that it was unfortunate, but it took place.
A question from the audience on a different topic. Did the Johnson County Sheriff's Office have a budget for investigating 2020 election fraud? Is or was that work justified? I will just note, it has been a years-long investigation into local election procedures led by Sheriff Calvin Hayden. Of course, we got a lot of questions about that for the primary. Hayden did lose that primary, so we got fewer questions about it. Still, several readers wasn't a joke. Still, several readers said they wanted to know what you plan to do with this investigation if elected. Is there a chance you will restart it, continue to spend county resources on the matter, or are you committed to ending it? Again, the original question from the audience was that work justified? I'll give you a chance to expound on this. Doug Bedford, 60 seconds.
Well, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't at least look at the investigation to find out what needs to be done. What I was told, what the citizens of Johnson County were told, is there was 200 people complained. I don't know if that took place or not. I don't work at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office right now. And so the first thing that I would do is sit with the investigators. We would look at the evidence that's there and determine whether a crime took place. If we would need to call in the district attorney's office, if we need to call in Fred Sherman from the election commissioner of Johnson County, or even Scott Schwab, the Secretary of State, to say, hey, this may not have been a crime, but maybe there's something that could happen, or through this investigation it was discovered we can do something better. Because one of the biggest things that we want to have in Johnson County is secure elections. We want to have that in the United States. And so if something can be done, now the money that was spent on it, I don't know, and I won't know until I get in there as the sheriff. But if there's nothing there for this, then I'm going to close the investigation. But if I don't look at it, I think I'd be remiss in my duties.
And the question to Byron Roberson, readers want to know what you plan to do with this investigation if elected. It's paused now. I don't know if it's officially closed or not. Is there a chance you would restart it, or are you committed to ending it? 60 seconds.
I would not spend another dollar of the taxpayers' money on this case. We're about to elect the next president of the United States in 2024. I would see how much money is spent, and I would let the citizens know how much money our sheriff spent on this, because I think they want to know. But as far as tying up any time with the district attorney's office, I'm sure they don't want to. I'm sure the attorney general doesn't want to, and I'm sure no one else wants to, because that was a waste of time. If there was a case to be brought, they would have brought it years ago. So I see no reason to spend any more of the taxpayers' time. And
Another topic, again from the audience, but also something I was planning to ask about. We'll start with Byron Roberson. Earlier this year, Sheriff Hayden ended a contract with the County Mental Health Center to provide services for inmates at the county jail in favor of a private contractor. County mental health officials and some county commissioners objected to that, pointing to data that show that inmates who have been able to access county mental health services in recent years did have lower rates of recidivism. So we did have a question about lowering recidivism in the county jail. The sheriff cast that move as one that would save money. If elected, will you choose to continue using the for-profit contractor for mental health services at the jail, or will you return services to the county mental health center? We'll start with Byron first, 60 seconds.
so I started the first co-responder unit in Prairie Village Police Department, and as chief, I increased those numbers. That is a person that is a mental health professional that goes with our police officers to calls for service. And those are extremely important. They are extremely important in providing that continuity of care from the time an officer comes to contact with the person to when the person gets help afterward. Inside the jail, we have Johnson County Mental Health that was put out of the jail in June. We now have a for-profit company that is doing the same thing that one of the best, Johnson County Mental Health, one of the best organizations that we have for mental health in this region, is not inside the jail. It makes no sense. Continuity of care could not be better from having someone, a private sector on the inside of the jail and Johnson County Mental Health on the outside of jail. You have to bring back, re-engage Johnson County Mental Health.
A question to Doug Bedford. Would you choose to continue using for-profit contractors for mental health services at the jail, or would you return services to the county mental health center?
One of the things that I mentioned early on, and I've said numerous times, is you have to have teamwork to get the job done. And that's teamwork with city police agencies, teamwork with county and state agencies. What was really good while I was there as the undersheriff with Johnson County Mental Health in the detention center, if an inmate was released on Sunday, on Monday they could continue their care. Right now, I recently met with Tim DeWeese, the director of Johnson County Mental Health, and his answer to me was, I don't know. They don't know what kind of a relationship there is with the current agency or the current for-profit group that is in there and the mental health with Johnson County Mental Health. That's imperative. That's imperative. What you're going to do is the recidivism. That's a tough word for me. But you're going to get the inmates that are released. If their care falls off, they have a very, very good chance of getting back into the criminal world again. We need to prevent that. Anything we can do to help a citizen in Johnson County or a citizen that has mental health issues and is in the detention center, we need to do it.
Just a couple more questions before we close. We did have a couple of questions regarding working with federal immigration officials. We had this question from the audience during the presidential campaign. Some candidates are talking about mass deportation of immigrants. What is your position on how to manage and implement such a presidential mandate if it were to come to pass, and you are Johnson County Sheriff? Are you legally required to follow that mandate? Another questioner asks, how would you work with ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement? So how would you work with federal immigration agents? Would you follow a mandate to mass deport individuals who are in the country illegally? We'll start with Doug Bedford, 60 seconds.
Well, one of the things with the sheriff and law enforcement as a whole is that we enforce the laws that are already on the books. And so we could always speculate and say, hey, what if this happened? What if that happened? What we will do is, I'm not going to be a lobbyist. I have no aspirations of being a career politician. I'm going to be the sheriff of Johnson County, and I will enforce the laws on the books. We need to work with the federal government. We need to work with ICE. Currently at the sheriff's office, if somebody is arrested and they were born in a foreign country, immigration would be contacted and then say, would you want to put a hold on this individual or not? And whenever that individual's case is satisfied in Johnson County, immigration would be contacted. They have 72 hours to come and pick up the inmate. If they don't pick up the inmate or the detainee, then they're going to be released. Otherwise, immigration will come and get them. You have to have a good working relationship with the federal government, with any of these agencies. Once again, it comes down to teamwork. We all want a common goal. Policing is easy. Keep people safe, keep the citizens safe.
Same question over to Byron Roberson. If you faced a mandate of mass deportation, how would you handle that as Johnson County Sheriff? The other question, how would you work with ICE? So maybe take both of those questions at once if you would, 60 seconds.
So I've read about it and seen a lot of it in the news about one of the candidates that wants to do a mass deportation. It's not constitutionally legal. I would not be a part of it. I would refuse to do that. That sounds like Nazi Germany to me. How are you gonna even figure out who is legal and who is illegal? Are you gonna go to door and find out if they're legal or not? It's impossible. Regulations, yes, we should have better regulations on how we vet people, how we get people processed, how we make them legalized citizens. Yes, we should do that, and I support that. But I do not support what is being proposed right now with just rounding people up. It's an impossibility. It's not what, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the facilities, we don't have anything to do what is proposed like that.
Final question before closing statements. It comes from the audience. It's a good question to close on before you give us your final remarks. Maybe it's a chance to get some rebuttal-worthy material out of the way. What is the biggest difference in your platforms and candidacies aside from your party affiliation? Of course, Doug Republican, Byron Democrat. So this person notes your values and views seem to be very similar, though I've noted several differences in your conversation tonight. But the biggest difference between you and your opponent, Byron Roberson, go first, 60 seconds.
So the biggest difference between myself and my opponent is that I have sat in the chair. I've been the chief of police for 4 years. I've made those tough decisions. Those things have come to my desk, and I've made those tough decisions and went forward. I'm the captain of the ship. I give them a vision, I give them a direction, and we build together and we move in the right direction. There's a big difference between being the undersheriff and the deputy chief and the chief and the sheriff. There are two big differences. When something goes wrong, when the budget is over, they don't go to the undersheriff, they go to the sheriff. When something happens and something happens out in the public and your deputies are held accountable, they don't go down to the sheriff, they go to the sheriff. It's the same thing for the chief of police. The chief of police makes those decisions. I have made those decisions for the last 4 years and created a professional police department, and I can do the same at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office.
Question to Doug Bedford, what's the biggest difference between you and your opponent?
Well, I think I would agree to disagree. I have sat in the chair. I have 26 years at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office has over 700 employees, and I have managed that group. There's over 500 sworn at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and I have managed that group. While I was there, it was a $90 million budget. And I believe I have sat through the meetings. I have sat through the meetings with the detention staff. The sheriff would typically go to Topeka. The sheriff would go to other events, and I would be there as the undersheriff, working with the executive staff, working from the deputies all the way up. For lack of better terms, I know where the light switches are in those buildings. There's 12 different divisions at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. I have worked in 10 of those divisions. I know what it takes. I know what it's like to work with the inmates in the jail. I know what it's like to patrol the rural areas where there's no street lights. I have done all of that stuff in the investigations division, the warrant division. I have been there, and I'm true and tested.
Closing statements, due to the coin flip before, Byron will go first on closing statements, so this is your last chance to say your final piece, both of you, so we'll start 60 seconds with Byron Roberson. Your closing statement.
So I have been the chief of police for the last 4 years. And being the chief of police, you have to have a level head. You have to be able to listen more than you talk. If you look at my webpage, you'll see people that have endorsed me. And I put those on there because they're important. It's people like John Douglas. It's people like Ellen Hansen, Steve Cox, Darrell Forte, and the governor of Kansas. Those are my endorsers. Those are people that are important. Those are people that have done the job. None of them have been my employees. None of them have worked for me. I believe that a good leader learns how to listen, and then they apply that to the mission. They apply that to their vision. I've been able to listen to what my people need, and my people are the people, as well as my employees, as well as the governing body. I have worked with all of them in order to make this Prairie Village Police Department a professional organization. We can do the same in Johnson County.
And Doug Bedford, your closing statement to round out this forum.
I've been endorsed by more than 140 military and retired law enforcement. A great percentage of those are from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, to include Sheriff Frank Denning, Sheriff Curry Myers, there's a sheriff in Western Kansas, there's majors, captains, deputies, sergeants, all of those people that I have worked with for so many years, they know the leadership that I'm going to be bringing to the agency. What it comes down to, it's a little bit different between a sheriff's office and a police chief. The sheriff's office does answer to each and every one of you. I've done that role. I was the sheriff whenever Cal Hayden was out of town. I did it for 4.5 years as the undersheriff. That's what the job was. I knew my role, and that's what I did. The sheriff's office has over 700 employees that I manage. Again, a budget while I was there of $90 million. What has to happen is you look at the comparative. I've been there. I know where everything is. I know how to run the organization. Is right now a good time to try to have a learning curve for the position of sheriff? And I don't think it is.
We'll give them a round of applause for this. Before everyone gets up, we are going to have a DA forum right after this. It's now a little bit past 7. We wanted to start at 7. That went a little bit long. That's fine. We're going to aim to start at 7:05. But please, if you want to get up and talk a little bit, you can do that. If you're going to leave, please exit with alacrity. If you're going to stay, please kind of stay in the same area because we are going to try to restart at 7:05. Thank you so much.
You're staying.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be right back. Byron. I was gonna say. Have you read the Kansas Family and Personal Protection Act? Or maybe I have it backwards. Maybe it's Personal and Family. Have you read that?
No, what is it?
You have not? That is the Kansas Act about gun control in Kansas. You said there are no rules about guns in Kansas. That's 26 pages.
I tell you what, send me an email.
You're not willing to talk about your statement?
Billy, we're good. We're going to get. You can grab it
Sure.
on the outside, but we're trying to get.
Gotcha.
How are you doing?
Doug, he said there are no rules on guns in Kansas. I wrote down no rules with our guns is what he said.
No what? I'm sorry, what did he say?
Byron said there's no rules with guns in Kansas. No rules on guns or with guns. Those are his words. I think that may be false.
I would think so.
I think there are 30 questions on 4473, the federal form, and there's 26 pages to the KFP.
Ultimately, what it comes down to, and I saw you nodding in approval, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is what it comes down to. It's going to come down to gun safety. That's what we have to do. It comes with education, but at the same time, red flag laws. That could be me saying, "Oh, you're a mental, take this gun," and then your gun's gone.
Fair trials are
you
important.
cannot do that.
That's
and
people's
that's why I
rights.
said I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. And I won't do that.
Well, I hope you win, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, grab a sign on your way out.
I would love. I got to stay for the second forum, but I would love to grab one if there's still one out there.
You want to grab it right now and take it to your chair?
Not a bad idea. Whoop. Maybe I'll support everybody. This space is my lawn.
I'm very well. I'm gonna make it the next 20 days, I promise. Yeah.
Start doing a little walk in here.
Interesting how they pushed me off for alacrity's sake, right? But here we all are still mutzing around.
So did you grab some signs?
I grabbed some signs. 2 of them are going to go on the ground, 2 of them are going in the trash can.
Can I ask, what are those signs for?
They're for my yard.
Oh, they're for your Roberson and Bedford?
Oh yeah, I got the wrong ones, didn't I? Let's see. You take that one? All right. Thank you.
I thought that was pretty interesting, especially if you're going to put both of them in your yard.
Yeah. Well, maybe I want to support everybody, right? There we go.
Here comes this.
Thank you so much. Yep, still going.
You keep doing it.
Thank you.
You said there's no rules on guns, but there's 30 questions on the 4473. That's a lot of rules. Nothing to say. I don't know.
Right now, Billy, I don't know.
Why wouldn't he talk to you?
They don't like to talk when they're wrong. I guess that's all I can infer. You guys want to get some signs, either for the yard or the trash can? They're sitting out there.
Well, maybe on the way out.
On the way out?
Yeah. Now they're saying the Bible will be one political sign.
One per candidate, right?
Oh, one per candidate.
That's what it says in the bylaws. One per candidate.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just making sure I read it. Clarifying. So technically, I could put one for every person on it. Just to be fair to
If you want, honestly,
That'd
yeah.
be inclusive.
That's inclusive,
That's
right?
inclusive. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
When everybody's in my yard. You come to the meetings and see me. You get after it out and come down here.
You guys have a lot of frontage space against 67,
Exactly.
so
We could,
it is a blank canvas.
What's it worth to them?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question to be asked. So at least twice they told me not to delay things. That I'm talking to folks. They need to move it on. But let's just be clear on the record. How many people are still here milling about? And the presenter has not made one more comment. Oh, maybe they're going to make a comment? We'll see. Felt a little bit targeted to me.
Hi, good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Johnson County Post featuring candidates vying for Johnson County District Attorney. We will give these 2 candidates a chance to introduce themselves shortly, but first, my name is Kyle Palmer. I'm the editor of the Johnson County Post and honored to be the moderator of this, our last forum for candidates vying in the November 5th general election. That deserves a round of applause. To our subscribers of the Post, I want to thank you for your support that allows us to put on events like this. We would not be able to do our annual election coverage without your ongoing support. Most of our revenue indeed comes from our more than 7,500 paying subscribers. If you do not currently subscribe and want to check us out, consider joining our growing community. Go to johnsoncountypost.com and check us out. Big thanks once again to Johnson County Library, who's co-sponsoring all the events we've done this fall over the last month, including this final one at Central Resource Library. As they did last year, Johnson County Library is helping us has helped us put on 8 nights of forums, leading up to Saturday, October 19th, when early voting starts. We're also live streaming this event tonight on the Post Facebook page, as we plan to do with the other forums we have scheduled over the next month. Oh my gosh. Update my script, we're done. This forum in its entirety will be archived at our Facebook page, so so that voters can watch it at any point between now and November 5th. And of course, I want to thank the candidates. Both of you are here tonight. It's a busy time of year. As I said in the last form, it's a busy chapter into your lives. Running for office can be time-consuming and labor-intensive, so we do appreciate you showing up and bearing your positions on the issues that matter to our readers. A final reminder about format for these candidates, as well as in the audience, if you did not come to the first one, each of these candidates will get a chance to give a brief 1-minute opening statement. Based on the coin toss, Vanessa will go first. After that, they'll each get the same questions, 1 minute or so to respond to those questions. I'll make it clear how much time you have. You'll each get the same amount of time. I have some scripted questions, but as well as in the first form you saw, you could write down questions on your index card, pass them up here. I got to quite a few in the first form. We have only two candidates here for a full hour, so we could get to a lot of audience questions as well, so write down your question, try to make it applicable to both candidates. If a candidate mentions their opponent by name in their response, or it's clear they are referencing the other candidate, we may give the other candidate a chance at a rebuttal. That's done as a courtesy. Don't want to get too extended back and forth on singular issues, but do want to give that courtesy if it's needed. Again, for the candidates, post reporter Leah Wonkum will be timekeeping. She'll be flitting about the room, gathering questions as well. She'll give you a yellow card for a 30-second warning, the red sign as well when your time is up. That's done as a courtesy to let you know to wrap up your thought. Again, I'll say it once again, Juliana Garcia working the cameras, Caitlin McLaughlin running the live stream, Lucy Chrisman and Andrew Dodd also as well. And we'll say Kylie Graham also in the audience taking pictures as well for us. We do appreciate that. All the staff members who are here tonight working extra. And also make a note finally about audience decorum. We have candidates up here representing different views on some high-profile issues that in some cases have the potential to engender strong emotions, so please respect their time, their willingness to share their stances in a public forum such as this. So we'll ask that audience members try to refrain from speaking over candidates, having audible reactions or outbursts in the crowd, showing signs or doing any other thing that might distract candidates while they're trying to put their thoughts together, which can be hard. I know, I'm just reading from a script here, not. Okay, with that being said, let's start with opening statements. Again, with the coin flip before we started, it fell to Vanessa Reebley first, so she will give the first opening statement. We'll each get 60 seconds, and we'll start with Vanessa.
Thank you, first of all, for everybody being here tonight. My name is Vanessa Reebley, and I have worked in the criminal justice system here in Johnson County for over 26 years. 21 years as a prosecutor, 5 years as a defense attorney. I am running because I believe we are at a critical juncture in our district attorney's office. The plain truth is the office is not functioning at the level it should. And the reason why is a lack of leadership. And a lack of leadership in that office affects community safety. The incumbent is going to tell you that crime is flat, that everything is well and good in that office, and that is not accurate. At a previous forum, we talked about how property crime was up. Violent crime is up 4%. We know about the fentanyl crisis. Johnson County is the second leading state in opiate overdose deaths for the last 5 years. And only 48% of Johnson County residents believe that crime is competently prosecuted here in Johnson County. Johnson County deserves a leader who will work inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom. My estimate is the current DA has only prosecuted 6 jury trials. I was on 3.
Currently, wrap that up, yeah.
Currently, he has 0 cases assigned to him.
Steve Howe, your opening statement is your chance to respond as well as give your opening statements.
Good evening. My name is Steve Howe. I'm your current district attorney. And this election is about proven performance and proven leadership. Proven performance is when I took office, we reduced the crime rate, and it stayed flat for the entirety of the 16 years that I've been in office. Proven performance also means that of the we had 155 convictions for murder cases and 2 losses. That's proven performance, and that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through leadership, that happens with an office of really dedicated individuals working with law enforcement to get the job done. Proven leadership is going to the legislature and arguing for laws that help protect our community, including protecting our elderly and prosecuting the fentanyl dealers that are impacting our county and our state. Working on the Saki initiative to help eliminate the sexual assault kits, and also other initiatives like the co-responder program in our specialty courts. That's proven leadership, getting the job done both inside and outside the courtroom.
We'll start this question, or this form, as we did the last form, with a question that we received from a reader via email. I think we actually did receive it before the primary, but it's worth revisiting now that we have you two in the general election. This reader asked, what is the #1 public safety issue in Johnson County, and how would you address this issue if elected or re-elected, in your case, Steve Howe? So order falls to Steve to start this one. You'll each get 60 seconds. The #1 public safety issue in Johnson County.
I would say the fentanyl crisis is the #1 issue that we're currently facing. I went to the Kansas legislature this year and got increased penalties for the fentanyl drug dealers. That was something I led. Just recently, 2 of my prosecutors received an award from the Overland Park Police, or the city, for their 2 cases that they prosecuted for a fentanyl dealer who killed 2 of our citizens. That is what we're facing, and Johnson County is the leader in that, as far as prosecution as well as other initiatives, including going out and using our specialty court to try to break that cycle of abuse so individuals don't continue to use this deadly drug. We continue to be the leaders in the state, and we have a lot of initiatives in place to continue to try to break that cycle that we see from fentanyl impacting the youth and the young adults in our community.
Same question over to Vanessa Reedley. What's the #1 public safety issue you see in Johnson County? How would you address it if elected? 60 seconds.
So I would say the #1 public issue is drugs, followed closely by mental health. I would say 60 to 65% of my clients suffer from substance abuse and/or mental health, or combined. What we need to do is bring back the specialty units in the Johnson County District Attorney's Office so we can effectively prosecute these cases. We need to develop a prosecutors working group with federal and state prosecutors so we can train each other and help each other in these fentanyl overdose deaths so we have better success. We need to assign a prosecutor to be a liaison with the Johnson County Drug Task Force. We know with our new sheriff in town, I don't know where Sheriff Roberson went, but we're gonna build up that task force. And there needs to be an ADA assigned as a liaison so they can immediately work on these search warrants. They can immediately give advice as opposed to leaving a message at the front desk. And finally, whenever there's an overdose, a fentanyl overdose, our office, my office, needs to be called so we can immediately review, are there search warrants, are things we can do to track down the dealers, to seize the guns, and to seize the drugs that are involved in this.
We'll move on to another issue about staffing. It's about how you would manage the DA's office. Publicly accessible data is relatively hard to come by, but I believe, Vanessa, you pointed out in the past that there has been, at least in your estimation, too much turnover at the DA's office. DA Howe has responded during the primary, at least, by pointing out that his office is now nearly fully staffed. They have an experience level of attorneys that picked up. For Vanessa Reedley, is turnover an issue in the DA's office, and more broadly, what steps would you take to recruit and retain a high-quality staff of prosecuting attorneys? We'll start 60 seconds here with Vanessa Reedley.
Yes, turnover is an issue. 50% of prosecutors have left in the last 4 years. In the last 30 days, 4 resigned, 3 of which went to other prosecutorial offices. My opponent talks about it as the great COVID retirement, not accurate. And his primary opponent called him to the carpet on that, and he has stopped saying that. At our last forum, he talked about how firms are recruiting these ADAs out of his office. That is not correct. People are leaving because they are not happy with the leadership. I talked about in my response that one of the things we do, again, is bring back these specialty units, because what has happened is management is decentralized. There's 7 different section chiefs that are supervising these different courts. That leads to people being managed, and there's inequities in how this happens because they're doing it in different ways. So we have to bring back the centralization of management. We have to value our employees. That means mental health check-ins. That means providing them.
We'll ask a few follow-up questions about this. So just finish that final thought that you were, yeah.
One of the things that, when I was in the office, there was one group that they would give mental health check-ins to. I was not part of that group, yet I was working major homicide cases, and I always saw the inequity in that. Also, I want to make sure that there are things.
We'll stop there. Well, I guess we have
You
a
should say objection.
Yeah. We're both attorneys, I need to be on law here. Steve Howe, certainly some parts of Vanessa's answer you might want to respond to directly, but the question again, is turnover an issue in the DA's office? What steps would you take to recruit and retain, or have taken to recruit and retain a high-quality staff of prosecuting attorneys? 60 seconds.
First of all, we're one of the premier offices in the region and continue to be so, and we're one of the few offices that don't have any openings. Our experience level hasn't diminished, and we're getting excellent results. You know, it was interesting, she talks about leadership. The county did a survey of all county employees, including my staff. It was anonymous. And 90% of the staff were satisfied with the leadership in my office and satisfied with my leadership in the office. So if this office is supposedly broken, then how is it that I score a 90% rating? How is it that we get and keep the crime rate at a low level? How is it that we get 152-2 criminal convictions on homicide cases? This is fact that she's putting out there, not reality. It's fiction that she's putting out there. It's not actual reality. And really, this office continues to be a shining example of prosecutors, how to run a prosecutor's office. And is the reason why we don't have any openings is people want to come to our office, want to work in this office, because it's a high-performing organization.
Well, I'll ask both of you explain your approach to assigning cases to assistant DAs. How do you organize and departmentalize the attorneys in your office, and why would you take that approach? We'll start with Steve Howe first, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm really disappointed that Vanessa would bring up something that's totally false, which is we don't have people who have specialties, when in fact that's not true. And there's lawyers in the courtroom. She did that at the bar exam, or excuse me, the bar luncheon, and we had judges that know that that's not the truth. So she's bringing up things that just are patently false. We have individuals with specialties that have the training and experience to handle white collar, juvenile, domestic violence, special victims unit. That continues on. The only difference we had was instead of having people run from 8 to 9 different courts, they're assigned to one court. That's the only difference. And it was done for efficiency reasons. And as a manager, as a leader, you have to make the decisions that are best for the office and for the community. And that's what we did. She wants to go backwards instead of moving forward. And I think that's a dangerous concept for a leader to have.
Throw it over to Vanessa Reevely, the idea of how you would organize your office, certainly also some things within Steve's answer you might want to respond to directly, but also you've already touched upon it a little bit, how you would organize or departmentalize the prosecuting attorneys in the DA's office.
So I'm disappointed that the DA is not telling the truth about the office. If you look at the phone chart, you will see that there are specialties and they have one name underneath them, one name, that's the section chief. What happens within those courts, those are generalists. Here's the example I want to give you. So 4 attorneys resigned, 3 have left. So they have shuffled attorneys between courts who are supposed to have these specialties. So when an attorney leaves court A, they leave all of their cases, 150 of their cases. That means 150 victims. That means 150 detectives. And then they move over to a new caseload that they've had no involvement with until that moment. And they get 150 new cases. Does that sound like something that is going to protect our community? That these prosecutors are going to be on top of their cases when they're shifted to these different units? You want to know the true mirror of the Johnson County DA's office? Who is law enforcement supporting? That's me. The FOPs support me. In his political ads, he says he's supported by law enforcement. That's only halfway accurate.
Yeah.
It's retired law enforcement that haven't been there for over 4 years.
One more question, but I'll give Steve 30 seconds to respond if you would like to those last points.
We do move people when there's a need, and that has happened throughout my career as district attorney. And so when people specialize and when people elevate themselves to a different level of cases, yes, we do move them. But it all comes down to this: what's the results? She talks a lot about where we're going to put people, what they're doing. Well, look at the results, and the results say that this office gets the job done each and every day, and it helps advocate for this community and the victims of crime. And that's the bottom line. The facts spell out the truth.
And the one final question regarding staffing, office management. Again, the order falls to Vanessa first on this one. This question came to us from a reader email. This person asks, the DA's office has about 100 employees and several $1 million budget. We do have a question about the budget up here as well from the audience. So this reader wants to know what experience do you have supervising, managing people or an office? What experience do you have managing a multi-million-dollar budget? That might be more for Vanessa, but I'll let you start that off first. 60 seconds, you're experiencing managing an office and a budget.
I want to go back to his point about look at the stats. Try to find the stats. They're not on the DA's website anymore. So don't just let him talk and tell you what the stats are. Look for those stats. So managing the office. I was a supervisor within the office. I managed the economic crime unit. Have I managed a $15 million budget, which is what is at hand at the DA's office? No. But can I do it? Yes. I have an accounting degree, a business administration degree. I passed the CPA exam. I know how to work with others. I can manage others. I'm a proven leader. So I'm not afraid of taking up that responsibility.
Stepping over to Steve Howe, of course, you've been district attorney, so it might be self-evident, but explain your experience supervising, managing the office, as well as managing the budget. We did have a question from the audience about how you would balance budget concerns while also still trying to hire new staff. So your approach to managing the office's budget.
Well, first of all, I do manage a budget. I manage people. I think that's the important aspect of being district attorney is managing people in a way that people want to work for you. And that's why if you look at the survey about how my staff feels about me as a leader, I think that's indicative of the fact that a leader that knows what the people need and acts responsibly and treats people fairly and equitably. In this office, I also have to work with the county commission, and so it's important for me to be able to establish relationships and make efforts when needed for additional resources. The one thing that I'm very mindful of is that this is your taxpayer dollars, and so I'm very frugal about when I ask for extra resources, and only when we need those resources do I go to the county commission to ask for additional staff. And so that's the way I operate as a leader. I lead by empowering my people, and that's, I think, an important aspect of being district attorney.
Let's move on to a different topic. The order will start with Steve Howe here. Had a number of questions about diversion. The Johnson County District Attorney's Office currently runs diversion programs for both adult and juvenile offenders meant to give people who have committed relatively minor crimes an alternative to incarceration. I have a handful of questions up here that will be follow-ups to this initial question. As District Attorney, what will be or what has been your approach towards offering defendants an opportunity at diversion? Do you think the current programs offered are adequate, or would you like to see them tweaked or expanded in any way? We'll start with Steve Howe, 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, we probably have the most expansive diversion program of all DA's offices in the state of Kansas, including juvenile and adult. We expanded it recently, and that is we included a 6 months diversion for marijuana possession. So it just requires a person to get an evaluation. We felt that was responsive to how the community was viewing that crime, and so we just recently instituted that. We also recently instituted a more expanded mental health diversion, because I do agree with Vanessa that mental health is a big issue in the community, and because we have tripled the number of involuntary commitments over the last 5 years, it's important that we have not only a diversion plan, but also our behavioral mental health core that's in place over this last year. So those are the types of pieces that we put into place recently, and we'll continue to evaluate the needs of the community, and as the community changes, there might be additional needs in that diversion area.
Question over to Vanessa Reevely. Do you think the current programs offered by the Johnson County District Attorney's Office for diversion are adequate? Would you like to see them tweaked or expanded in any way?
So we need to expand access to these programs. One of the things has to do with fees. By statute, you can waive these fees, you can lower these fees. There's no requirement for these fees to be paid 100% up front. And some of my clients, when I tell them, hey, you've been granted diversion, but you need to come up with $150, they're like, what? I already had to pay an application fee. So we need to look at that. We also need to expand access as far as discretion. I have a client that's in a mental health crisis, and there was a municipal court violation, and then there was a district court misdemeanor case. He's not eligible for diversion under Steve Howe's guidelines because he has a pending municipal court case. And when you think about it, mental health issues don't occur in isolation. You're gonna have several incidents that occur. That needs to be expanded. They have a 5-10 rule. If you have a misdemeanor within 5 or a felony with 10, you're not eligible. And that needs to be looked at in order to expand access to that diversion process. And then finally, is it really a good use of our time to have diversion coordinators monitoring people who have simple possession of marijuana? Is that where you want your taxpayer dollars used to supervise these individuals? And I would submit to you the answer is no.
We have some specific questions regarding this in a more specific vein. We do have a question from the audience that says, recidivism rates are exponentially higher for kids who are incarcerated. 40% of those that are incarcerated are re-incarcerated within 3 years. That's what this person writes. What will you put into place to educate kids in order to avoid incarceration? I'll also say that there is a Johnson County Youth Court that's aimed at juveniles who have committed first-time or relatively minor offenses, so that is a program. But talking specifically about juveniles who are entering the criminal justice system maybe for the first time for relatively minor offenses, what would be your approach to, I don't want to say prosecute, but maybe handle those individuals in your office? We'll start with Vanessa Reebley, 60 seconds.
We have to look at programs that don't immediately criminalize their conduct. Mental health and substance abuse is the reason, it's the path that so many of our juveniles are in the system. And I had a family member that I was able to represent who ended up in the juvenile system because of drugs and mental health. And what happens is when someone is in the midst of a mental health crisis, and say they maybe, tab a police officer, push a police officer, then they get arrested or charged with that, and then they're taken to a mental health facility. Well, when they get out, they have to deal with the fact that now they are charged in a criminal case. So we have to utilize the programs, whether it's youth court, whether it's pre-file diversions, MIP programs, do everything we can to give them an opportunity, to educate them, to help them. And I'm glad to say that my nephew was able to work through his issues, and now he's farming in western Kansas. So there is hope.
Same question to Steve Howe. Recidivism among kids who are incarcerated goes up, and they have the likelihood of being re-incarcerated, as this reader pointed out. What's the place to educate these kids to help them avoid incarceration? What would be the office's, what should the office's approach be towards youth in this situation?
Well, first of all, over 50% of the juvenile cases get some form of diversion or IIP, whether it's youth court, pre-filed diversion, filed diversion. And so that is something that we've embraced and continue to embrace for a considerable period of time. In fact, the juvenile diversion unit, the diversion officers, are actually part of my office and supervise those individuals. And so since 2014, when the juvenile justice bill went through, things have changed, and there's less individuals being incarcerated as juvenile offenders and more of them going through community programs to try to change their behavior. Because I do agree that if you come down heavy at the beginning, that you actually may set up additional situations where the person will be involved in the criminal justice system. And since we are probably, well, I know for a fact that we do as many IIPs as the rest of the state. So that tells you how aggressive our program is and how responsive we are to that type of situation.
One final question along this vein. It does get a little bit more specific, but I've had 4 or 5 comments from the audience, so I feel kind of obligated to ask about it. I will say I don't know all the details, but there seem to be the suggestions that juveniles have been recently prosecuted for crimes that might be considered sex crimes, but they involve phones taken on, pictures taken on phones. Maybe kids having consensual sex, but the point is that once they enter the criminal justice system, this creates a negative effect where they maybe go down the road where they're getting either bullied, suffer mental health issues because of the prosecutions they're facing for, again, what might be inappropriate behavior as a teenager. But I think the purpose of these questions is to ask about either why this is being done or should the DA's office be doing this. And so I'll give you both a chance to answer this. And we'll start with Steve Howe for 60 seconds.
Yeah, try to answer that question in 67 seconds. It's pretty challenging, but I will try. What I will say is age disparity is the big part of it. And then if it's an 18-year-old and a 13-year-old, we're gonna take a different approach than two 15-year-olds having sex, okay? And so typically we don't charge those cases if there is like age groups. Typically we try to work with the parents and try to work with the kids. To me, that's the right thing to do, instead of making these individuals sex offenders. And the same thing with phones. We don't prosecute kids for exchanging pictures of each other naked on the phones, but if those pictures are then used to blackmail and humiliate those individuals through bullying, then we take a very hard and fast approach, because we've seen too many kids who fall prey to that and then have suicidal tendencies because their whole life has been turned upside down. And so it just depends on the facts is what I guess I'll try to sum that up as.
Vanessa Reed, with a question to you again. Again, several audience comments. I think one commenter put it well, they see a growing gap between laws, current culture, teenagers' use of social media, sometimes these cases entering the criminal justice system when maybe it was just a simple teenage inappropriate act. What's your kind of position on this, or how would the DA's office approach it under your watch?
So I've represented several different juveniles in these types of cases, and they've not been filed because they shouldn't be filed. But what I tell my clients is, come on, no flash photography. We don't need to be taking pictures of everything we do. We don't need to be sending these pictures across the internet. I had a case where a phone had been seized. I was talking to the detective, and he's like, well, your client's got like 17,000 images. And I was like, oh no. But his comment was, well, that's not very many compared to most of the phones we see. So we have juveniles that are doing what I would say stupid things when it comes to that. And I agree, there's a difference between making child pornography versus taking pictures of each other and sending it to your boyfriend or your girlfriend. One thing I will say is making a juvenile register as a sex offender increases suicide rates. I had that come across my desk, and that was actually done by an evaluator that said, whatever happens in this case, please fight registration, because that increases juvenile suicide. And I think that's an important fact to think about in these cases.
Now, we got several reader questions and comments regarding how the Johnson County DA's office investigates officer-involved shootings. Many of these readers, and I said this in the first forum as well, many of these readers expressed sentiments similar to one emailer who told the Post that they perceive the process as, in their words, quote, too cozy with police, end quote. The DA's office will take the findings of the county's Officer-Involved Critical Incident Investigative Team, or OCIT, and determine whether criminal charges should be filed. In most, if not all cases in recent memory in Johnson County, criminal charges are not filed. Do you think OCIT accomplishes its stated mission of conducting impartial and transparent investigations? What changes or improvements, if any, would you like to see if elected? We'll start with Vanessa Reed for 60 seconds.
So we can do better. I was not assigned to the officer-involved shooting cases when I was in the office, but I have represented a police officer who discharged his weapon during a hostage situation, and then I represented a combat veteran from Afghanistan who, after he shot himself in the head, the DA's office, thankfully he survived, the DA's office charged him with aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, so I went through the process. First of all, we need to do annual training. I recently found out that the DA's office had a gap of at least 3 years before they were working with these officers. Officers get 40 hours of training through their agencies, but if we're gonna run the premier officer-involved shooting team in Johnson County, the DA's office has to lead the way. I'm gonna run out of time. You're gonna see my written response in the Johnson County Post, and I have several different ideas and things that I want to implement, which includes more timely decisions. In the Albers case, the decision was made in approximately 30 days. And the case that I represented the police officer on, it took 3 to 4 months. And that's a common complaint among law enforcement officers, that it's taking too long for these decisions. So please look at my Johnson County Post response, because I have numerous things that I want to change and not enough time.
Yeah, we'll ask a few follow-ups, so I do appreciate the plug, so to speak, but we'll come to Steve Howe. The question to you, again, do you think OCIT accomplishes its stated mission of conducting impartial and transparent investigations? What changes or improvements, if any, would you make if in your case re-elected? 60 seconds to start this topic stream.
These are typically tragic situations. Most of the individuals who are involved in officer-involved shootings are either have mental health issues or substance abuse issues, and so they are tragic. But our job is to apply the law to the facts and make a decision. And we do that each and every time and comply with the law. You know, the fact that we haven't charged an officer is not an indictment on the system itself. What it is, I think, is a good indication is that the law enforcement community in Johnson County is well run, well trained, and only uses force when necessary. And so I think that's what the facts show. And you know, Johnson County led the way as OSIT. We continue to do training. There was a little bit of a time that we did not do it. That was during COVID. So that did limit when we could do these meetings with 90 or 100 people. So that did inhibit that. But we do constantly do training, and I know law enforcement takes this very seriously, and so do we. And we're about effective justice, and whatever that means based on the facts and the law.
Well, a question from the audience pertaining to this issue. Many of the investigative records involved in these incidents are body cam footage, maybe dash cam footage as well. So what would be your views and stances on the release of such footage? When would it happen? When should it happen? Who would be able to see it, in what order? I mean, get specific as you want. We'll start with Steve Howe, 60 seconds.
Typically, the body camera footage is released at the conclusion when the decision is made, not at the early stages of the investigation. And the reason for that is we're still interviewing witnesses and trying to get their statements about what happens. And if you release the video, that can impact people's decisions and their memory. And so I think it's important for us to it's not a rush. It's not about how quickly we can do it, about how effectively we can get the facts and the evidence put together so we can make a decision. And I think that's the important thing. There is no, every case rises and falls on its own set of facts. Some are more complicated than others. And so we don't have a timeline. We're not forced to say in 45 days we have to have a decision. Instead, we wait until we get all the facts and evidence and make a proper decision in each and every case.
The question over to Vanessa, I will just say we're nearing 7:45. If you've been in the Johnson County Library branch at 7:45, you know that they announced that it's about to close. That announcement does not go off in this room. It does go off, but it goes off out there, so we might be able to hear it through the open doors, but I also think we might be able to speak over it. So when that comes up, if you feel the need to pause, feel free to do that. But the question to Vanessa Reebley, body cam footage, your stance on when it should be released, how it should be released, who it should be released to during the course of these investigations into critical incidents. The question to you, 60 seconds.
So I think, I wish I would have watched more body cam when I was a prosecutor. And I will tell you, in cases now, I'll get the reports as a defense attorney, I'll set them aside, and I'm gonna watch the body cams. I think those should be released as soon as possible, so that you cannot affect the integrity of the investigation. You have to do it pursuant to law, but it's important for the public trust to see what occurred. Think of Tyreek Hill, not an officer-involved shooting, but you got to see what occurred, right? Officer-involved shooting. You guys remember Sonia Massey up in Illinois where the officer shot her in the head? That is important to the public trust, that they see what occurred and the decisions by the DA's office. As far as who is it's going to be released to, you know, the family, I'm going to bring the family in not 2 hours before, like occurred in the Albers case, but sufficient time for them to review the officer-involved shooting body cam and for them to understand what happened and for it to soak in. There's never going to be closure with this, but they have to know what's coming down the road.
And just give Steve maybe a chance, if you want, to respond directly to the last thing that Vanessa said about the handling of the family in the Albers case, if you feel the need to respond to that.
Well, each and every case that I handle, I do the following. We do the investigation. We do a press release that outlines the facts and the law. We stand before the media and answer every question that they have. We play body camera footage if it is available. But at the same time, before we do all of that, we meet with the family and we try to answer questions that they might have regarding the reasons for my decision and try to provide them also opportunities to see the video. And then in each and every case, we give them that opportunity, and I think that's a fair way to handle it, considering the fact of what the family's gone through. And so I think that's a reasonable effort on our part to be mindful of not only the public situation, but also the family situation.
Last question in this topic, will jump back to Vanessa to answer this one. Of course, many of these incidents do involve someone in a mental health crisis. Should there be more specific requirements about what information is collected in an investigation and how investigators look into how law enforcement officers and departments handle situations dealing with those in a mental health crisis? I mean, you could contain your answer to the OSIP process, but both of you also mentioned the difficulties and challenges of mental health in Johnson County. So how should investigators looking into these incidents look at law enforcement officers handling situations dealing with these mental health crises?
Yes.
60 seconds.
I referenced it earlier. First of all, we have co-responders in Johnson County, which is a great program, and they have helped several of my clients. But I go back to the situation where somebody is in a mental health crisis. I have a situation now where this person ended up being involuntarily committed, but was charged with a misdemeanor to go along with that. Think about it. How do you have the intent to commit a crime when you're then being involuntarily committed? So we have to talk to law enforcement. We have to talk to our charging unit and decide what cases should be charged. When somebody who already has a mental health issue has court piled on top of them, I cannot tell you how stressful it is. And I will talk to my clients and I will say, it's a misdemeanor, we can work through it. But when you are already in crisis, it adds an unnecessary layer. It absolutely has to be dealt with.
And the question to Steve Howe, should there be more specific requirements about what information is collected during a crisis incident investigation that it does involve someone that had a mental health crisis? How should investigators look into how law enforcement officers and departments handle these situations when it is dealing with a mental health crisis specifically?
Well, Johnson County has been considered an innovator county by the National Association of Counties for the work in this area. We have co-responders, which I pushed and it accomplished while I was district attorney. We have CIT training for law enforcement across this county to give the officers tools on how to deal with individuals that are mentally ill. We have a behavioral mental health court. We have mental health diversion. And so we do have pieces together that will help give people justice that are suffering from mental health. But we also need to remember there's another entity here. And many of these mental health cases deal with violence towards other individuals. And so we have to remember the victims. We have to be able to have a balance between the mental health issues and the protection of the public in some of these incidences. So it's a difficult balance, but one that I think Johnson County, because we've gotten that awarded as an innovator county, is doing better than most jurisdictions across this country.
We've had a few questions from the audience, I guess for lack of a better term, referencing employees or individuals within the DA's office who might need disciplinary action. There are specific examples here that maybe I won't read out loud just because I can't verify or fact check these cases, but I guess the general question would be, how do you deal with an employee or an attorney who either for lack of experience or a bad mistake might need to be reassigned or dealt with in some way? So questioners from the audience wanting to ask you about how you would deal with a situation like that or deal within those situations within the ranks of your prosecuting attorneys. We'll start with Steve Howe, 60 seconds.
First of all, a lot of it could be trying to tutor that individual to change their behavior. You don't go in draconian and fire everybody for making a mistake. We're all human beings and people sometimes need corrective behavior. We also work very consistently with the county HR department, who are specialists in this area, and they do a very effective job working as a team with us to work on HR matters that come up during the course of the office. We're lucky that we don't have many, but at the same time, we want to give that employee an opportunity to change their behavior, to get better, and most people do, through instruction and through assistance. I think that's important as part of a leadership group, is to give people opportunities to succeed, not set them up to fail. And I think that's one of the things that we've really done over the course of my leadership as district attorney.
I think the question to you, Vanessa Wrigley, again, several comments from the audience alluding to maybe some issues within some employees in the district attorney's office, personal behavior, decisions, what have you. Won't go into personal details here, but how would you handle such situations if you manage the office?
Well, you have me curious. It sounds like you're not giving us all of the information, but I understand.
Well, I also don't appreciate people anonymously bringing stuff up involving HR.
Well, and
That's
I'm
pretty
not
inappropriate.
gonna read the actual, allegations, if you will, but I think the general theme being, how would you handle such situations, I think was the question that I asked, so Vanessa, read.
That was the action, or that was the question. So, when I was a supervisor, what I would tell folks is work hard and no drama. And I had a lot of millennials, and I laugh at that, because there's just a little different type of behavior. Like everything they do has to go on social media. I'm like, no, it does not. You don't need to do that. So work hard and no drama. Obviously, when there are HR problems in an office that size, there will be. You work with your HR problems and your HR partners. And you address those issues. And if necessary, you put somebody on a performance plan. But you make sure that if you're not mentoring them, you have somebody who will mentor them. But I will tell you, from working in that office, when there are problem employees and things are not addressed, that becomes a morale issue for the rest of us. If somebody is coming in late, leaving early, not doing their caseload, handing things off, underperforming, that affects morale, and that needs to be addressed.
The next question from the audience on a different topic. We'll start with Vanessa here. This audience member asking, what metrics would you use to identify budget priorities for reducing crime in Johnson County? So getting more back to the budget question, what metrics would you or do you use to identify budget priorities for reducing crime in Johnson County? 60 seconds, Vanessa, read.
You have to identify your problem areas, and like we talked about before, it's drugs and it's firearms in our community. Those go hand in hand, and also mental health. When I talk about bringing back the specialized units, that's not going to cost any additional budgetary monies. We're not going to need new personnel. What I've talked about is having a chief of staff, moving an attorney slot to that so you can mentor employees, so you can deal with the problem areas and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and our most experienced prosecutors to handle these types of drug crimes. A prosecutor's office isn't like a business where you can look at your income and your expense and you're trying to make money for your shareholders. What we're trying to do is get justice for our community, and we should not be driven by the dollar. We have to make sure that we have adequate resources, and the county commission has been phenomenal about increasing the budget and making sure there is enough money. We are the highest paid district attorney's office in the state of Kansas. You start now in the 90s. When I started, it was $42,000.
Same question to Steve Howe. What metrics do you use to identify budget priorities for reducing crime in Johnson County?
Usually we use data. And a good example of that is I talked about our involuntary commitments that have more than tripled in the last 5 years. I actually went to the county commission and said we need some additional staff. A good example, we had 12 individuals get hospitalized in one day 2 weeks ago. And so we've got numbers to show that we can only do so much with the staff that we have, and that we needed an additional staff member to help be a paralegal and put together all the information necessary for those very important cases. And so what we're trying to do is avoid these individuals becoming criminally and justice involved individuals through the involuntary treatment process. So that's a good example of how we address it. It's numbers, because I don't feel like expanding staff with taxpayers' money unless I can justify it through actual raw numbers.
Again, just another warning at 7:55. We'll get another warning, though. I will say it was pretty faint in here, so I don't think it interrupted whoever was speaking when it happened, but there will be another announcement at 7:55 that the library is about to close. Another question from the audience. You both mentioned Kansas programs for comparisons. What best practices in other states are you familiar with that could, in this questioner's words, move the DA's office forward? You may agree or disagree with that premise, but I guess would say impact the DA's office. What other programs or practices do you see in other states that you might want to emulate? So start with Steve Howe. 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to go to conferences and get national speakers to provide input and some takeaways of what other jurisdictions do, because we don't always have all the good ideas. And so sometimes it's good to have an open mind and listen to what other people have to say. And so that's something that we do consistently, is be able to embrace new ideas and move forward with those. A good example of that is we started a peer support program in our office. We were one of the first DA's office to have a peer support program. So right now, if one of my members of the staff is struggling, whether it's work-related or not, they can go to these peer members and ask for help and counsel them through that process. And those peer support members have gotten specific training on how to counsel individuals. And they also know when, in certain instances, because the stuff we deal with is pretty dark at times, being able to give them the necessary help, maybe with other licensed professionals.
And question to Vanessa Reevely, what other best practices in other states are you familiar with that, and this questioner's words, could move the DA's office forward, or at least that you would want to emulate if elected?
So, transparency. Go to the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office and look at their data dashboard. Again, I put it in my written responses. You can see everything from which agency submitted, to the percentage of cases that are filed, to jury trial verdicts and what has occurred. You can't find that in the Johnson County DA's office, and I would argue there's a reason for that. It's not out of state, but Wyandotte County started a program where prosecutors were responding to overdose deaths, so they could immediately try to get search warrants to seize drugs and guns. And then also Reno County here in Kansas, if you go to their website, the prosecutor's office, they have a very aggressive program on attacking the drug problem and drug overdose deaths. And it was impressive. And I talked to a task force member on the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and he talked about how they have gone to trainings with Reno County to understand what they're doing, and they have actually learned from Reno County on how to address overdose deaths. So that's something that I would look into.
We'll move back to Steve Howe for the next question. You guys both have, I think, alluded to this issue, so I'll give you a chance maybe to expound on it a little bit more. It is dealing with drugs. There have been several high-profile cases in recent years of drug overdose deaths, particularly those of teenagers, and in criminal prosecution to those who supplied the victims with the drugs. There have also been a string of prominent cases involving drug deals involving juvenile offenders that ended in violence. But the problem is bigger than that. Under your watch, what will be the DA's office approach, or has been, to targeting and prosecuting crimes involving drugs? And we'll start with Steve Howe here, 60 seconds.
We, again, are one of the more aggressive jurisdictions in the state and the region in going after those individuals. There have been 4 jury trials dealing with fentanyl overdose deaths cases. We've tried 3 of them in the state of Kansas. You look at some of our press releases, and we're talking about fentanyl dealers getting 10, 20 years in the penitentiary because they're dealing death, and it's having a huge impact on our community. And so we're very aggressive on taking on those cases and getting good results. And so I'm very pleased with our work with the law enforcement community, with our federal partners, and we've done some incredible work, and that's why everybody looks to our office for leadership and also ideas on how to address these issues. And so we're not slacking in that area, but actually leading in this area of addressing the issue. But unfortunately for us, it's like whack-a-mole with drug dealers. And you take them off, and there's other ones who replace it. And that's been going on since the 90s when I used to be in the drug unit. And so it's a constant problem, but one that is worth the effort put in by my office as well as law enforcement in Johnson County.
And the question back over to Vanessa Reevely. I will say you did go into some detail in an earlier answer, but what would be your approach to targeting and prosecuting crimes involving drugs?
So again, the first part of your question dealt with juveniles. So again, it's mental health, substance abuse, early intervention to try to stop these crimes before they happen. The DA talks about how they have tried 3 or 4 jury trials of drug overdose deaths. Those are important cases, right? We are leaders in the community. But did he try those cases? No, he is not out front trying those cases. The ideas that I have to go after the drug prosecutions, one is bring back our high-risk offender evaluation. It was something that Paul Morrison and Rick Gwynn had, and Paul would be in his office on Saturdays going through the high-risk offender files to see if the ADAs appropriately dealt those cases. If they didn't, they were taken to task for that. Again, we need a liaison with the task force officers. I can't tell you how many times I've heard complaints about how long it takes to get a search warrant. You leave a message with the on-call ADA, or you have to talk to somebody at the front desk. Time matters in these cases. And again, we have to work, we have to collaborate with other prosecutors to do best practices in these overdose cases. We have to learn from each other.
And give Steve Howe a chance to respond directly to not prosecuting the particular cases you may have mentioned. I will also say that my next question was going to be from the audience, discuss a case you have successfully prosecuted, but maybe give you a chance first to respond to that direct line from Vanessa Reebley.
I've tried 100 jury trials. Yes, I've had 6 jury trials as DA. A lot of my cases pled, and people went off to the penitentiary to serve life sentences. But you know what? My job isn't to be in the trenches. And if you want a DA that is there in court every single day and then they're not taking care of the HR and the budget issues, then I'm not your guy. You're supposed to lead and not be in the trenches with your individuals. And so I've handled a number of cases, and Vanessa's incorrect. I currently have the Olathe East officer school shooting that is my case, and so that's active right now. And so I do handle them, but that's not my priority. That's not what you expect out of your DA. You expect your DA to lead the office, and you don't do that by being in court every single day. So if you want to be in the trenches lawyer, this is the wrong position for you, Vanessa.
Well, give you a chance, Vanessa, to respond to that, the idea that maybe it's not the top DA's job to be in the court, but then also respond to the question, discuss a crime you have successfully prosecuted. So 2 parts there for Vanessa.
So you have to be a leader within the office in order for your prosecutors to respect you. I'm going to name some cases that Paul Morrison and Rick Gwynn did. Richard Grissom, Deborah Green, John Robinson, Allie Kemp, who was the victim of Benjamin Appleby, the Mid-Nazarene murders. They tried those cases because they were the district attorney's office. I'm not saying I'm going to be in court every day, but I'm going to take on the hard cases. I'm going to talk about a case in my closing that I have prosecuted, but I think what comes to mind is the Roxy. That was a case that involved 2 individuals that killed a young Olathe kid in a parking lot. The lead investigator in our office had to create a witness protection program because of what was occurring. They tried to kill one of our witnesses, and many people told me, you're never going to get a conviction. You're not going to get people to step up and testify about who killed these individuals because they are too scared of them. But we worked hard with the Overland Park Police Department, ATF, and we got that done. And 2 individuals who had killed before and would kill again are serving the rest of their life in prison.
So you wanted to cases that I've been involved in, the Jewish Community Center shootings, that was the case that I handled, as well as the most recent one was a capital murder case involving a young pregnant girl that was killed by her boyfriend, and I spent 3.5 weeks in trial doing a circumstantial case, proving that individual was guilty and sentenced him for life without parole. So I do go to court, but I don't go in the trenches every single day. And like I said, I've got the experience to do both things, leadership as well as being in the courtroom.
We're a little bit past 8 o'clock, maybe time for a couple more questions before we get to closing statements. It was asked in the first form for sheriff. Reader sent us this email, quote, "Firearms are now the leading cause of death for children and teens in America." Again, this reader speaking as the mother of a young daughter, this issue is very important to me as it is to many other parents in Johnson County. If elected or re-elected DA, what policies will you enact or support within the confines of your office to help curb gun violence in our community and ensure the safety of all our children? I'll also just add, some people wanting to know, are there any specific laws or policies you would advocate for in Topeka as one of the top law enforcement officers in Johnson County? So take on this issue. We'll start with Steve Howe for 60 seconds.
Well, there are gun laws already in place, and the issue is, do you enforce those gun laws? Do you prosecute those individuals and hold them accountable, especially ones who commit violence? The answer to that question over the last 16 years is yes. I have prosecuted those cases. The office has taken and held those individuals accountable for their actions, and so that is the easiest way to curb gun violence, is to hold people accountable. That's why this county's crime rate is different than Jackson and Wyandotte County. We hold people accountable. And there's a distinction between the two. In Wyandotte and Jackson County, gun violence is not treated seriously. And so that's what I'm proud of over the last 16 years, is working with law enforcement, holding people accountable, and by doing that, keeping our crime rate, especially our violent crime rate, down. There's no other county in Missouri and Kansas that has such a low crime rate in both property and violent crimes as Johnson County.
And the same question over to Vanessa Reebley, again, sent to us by email. What policies will you enact or support to help curb gun violence in our communities? Again, some audience members also wanting to know, are there any specific policies you would advocate for in Topeka regarding what they term gun sense legislation. Start there. Vanessa, 60 seconds.
So I am the only candidate on the stage that is a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate, and that is about gun safety. When it comes, and I'm very proud of that. I'm a gun owner. I have a 9mm Glock. I'm not about taking away people's guns. I'm about using them safely and making sure that people who are not supposed to possess them don't. I will tell you, I think all of the homicide cases that I worked with firearms, they were all stolen and they were possessed by people that should not have them. One of the things that I would change in the DA's office is right now you can have a formal diversion and you may get diversion if you use a firearm in a person felony offense. No, I don't think people should get diversion when they use a firearm. We need to work with our federal partners. Sometimes they can get more time on a felon in possession of firearm case than we can get on the state level, so we need to do that. And finally, again, it goes back to immediately responding to these drug cases and doing search warrants to seize guns, to seize drugs. We've got to drain the pool of stolen guns in our community.
Well, very mindful of time. It's 8:05, so we're going to move to closing statements. And with the coin flips before this began, it fell to Steve to go first on closing statements, and then we'll follow with Vanessa. So you'll each get 1 minute to make a final statement to those in the room as well as those online. So closing statements, we'll start with Steve Howell.
I talked about at the beginning, proven leadership and proven performance. Leadership at the state, the county, and municipal level. Being a voice about public safety in Topeka as well as here in Johnson County. That's what I've done. Proven performance. Despite all of the criticisms by Vanessa in this instance, the crime rate has not gone up. That's not by accident, ladies and gentlemen. The prosecution of big-time cases have been affected by the members of my staff. We get the job done both inside and outside the courtroom. What she's saying is, well, he's been in office long enough. And the joke I tell is, that would be tantamount to saying to Andy Reid, you've won 3 Super Bowls, guess what? We just had too much success. You need to go on your way, and we're gonna find somebody else. That's really what we're talking about here, folks, is that I've had a record of performance that can't be touched. And so if you look at what we've done with our law enforcement partners, we've kept you safe, and that's why I'm asking on November 5th, for your vote. Thank you.
And we'll do the final closing statement with Vanessa Reedley.
So the best way for me to explain why we need new leadership in Johnson County is, and why I am running, is I'm going to tell you a story. In May of 2010, Jerry Grovenberg, who owned Mr. G's, was shot and killed in a store. There was no DNA, there was no video, there were no latent prints. It was a whodunit. Shawnee PD solved the case. They submitted it to the DA's office in February of 2011. It sat for 3 years. This DA told Shawnee, you've already got a circumstantial case on a homicide. We're not going to do another one. When that homicide was over, the excuse was, well, there's somebody who's not going to testify. That sergeant did not give up. 3 years later, he came out, he staffed the case. I stepped up, I prosecuted the case, and I got a conviction. Think about that Grovenberg family. For 3 years, they were told by Shawnee PD, we know who killed your dad. We know we can prove it, but the DA won't do it. Think about it. And then think about if it's your family. Do you want him running your DA office? New leadership. Vote for me on November 5th.
Well, thank the candidates for their participation in tonight. The clock is late, so I'll eschew any of my normal announcements, but just say that early voting starts this Saturday, election day is November 5th. Thank you for attending and watching this forum. Go to johnsoncountypost.com for all of our election coverage. Have a good night.
Oh, okay.
And it makes you respect the fact that the court system works. And you know, for small, low offenders and stuff like that, you know, it's like, you know, it's really, it's accountability. I talk about accountability. Accountability can take many different forms, and that's one way of giving accountability with this young people. Well, it's great to see. So are you currently in it now? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm 17 years old.
Okay, so are you a judge now?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
only the prosecution judge.
Okay, well, I think that you were 17, that it's probably you're kind of one of the head friends up there.
And I did the project skip as well.
Oh, wow. Well, people like you are so important because my juvenile diversion staff is so busy, and we couldn't do a lot of the things we couldn't do without volunteers, and so kudos to you for kind of looking into this really and ladies and all that. When you graduate and go to college and everything, we have a program. And it's basically become junior prosecutors. So that means they go to court every day, and I mean, they really.
And this is after graduation?
Before graduation. Yeah, in the third year of law school, they get to spend a year-long internship in the office. That really, it's the first place we go if we have new, if we have an opening, we're like, you have a year-long internship, you know what those people are like, and so that's why we go with those many times. Yeah, it was very nice to meet you. I'll have to tell, so remind me again your name? Okay, I'll tell my staff that. I'll say that you said hi and everything like that. All right, it's nice to meet you folks. Take care.
Derek, you spoke very well up there.
Thank you.
You mentioned about not releasing body cam too early that it could influence witnesses. And you're not the first person to say that. I've heard that before, but I'm curious, how could unedited real video damage the validity of somebody's testimony?
Well, if they're an eyewitness and they see something and another, they haven't been interviewed yet.
Yeah.
If they see the video, it might change their perception of what they saw.
Do you think it would make them see something that didn't happen?
Sometimes. It really can impact people. And so that's something that we try to steer away from. But there are instances where we could release it early if we feel like there's a public need to release that.
You never edit it though, right?
Oh, no, we don't edit.
Okay.
Well, I tell you,
I mean, other than you censor things sometimes.
Yeah, pixelate and stuff like that.
I've seen that, but I've never seen like the truth be altered in one of those videos.
No.
Some things are blacked out, but you don't like add anything.
No.
I'm just really surprised that could make testimony less reliable.
Yeah.
Because it's the true video.
It's something that we talked about that especially investigators and a lot of psychologists have talked about the fact that that's not a good idea to do that because it can influence somebody's memory as to what actually happened.
Well, I hope you do your interviews quickly because I believe, especially in officer-involved shootings, that needs to be out very, very quickly.
No, I agree with you, 100%.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'll see you later. Never know. Sometimes in the middle of the night. I know.
I'm going to tell Byron this county because my son in law was lecture. And now he's lost his father.
At Sheila's place.
Oh, it's Sheila's.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you the number.
Yeah.
No, you weren't. I'm trying to get it going.
I was gonna say.
No, not yet. Well, it's over 7, so I'm gonna say 5:36-ish. But I don't even have details yet, so I'm trying to get Byron on because I gotta get through this debate first, and then I'll, yeah. Yeah. But I just want to grab it.
It's a great story. Oh, well.
Listen, guys. Yeah. Walk with you. Amazing. Thank you. You did.
It's all right. Good to see you, Alan. Take care of yourself. What gives you that?
But I had another friend there, so.
Now, tomorrow, I got on your calendar for tomorrow, Thursday afternoon, at 2 p.m.
Are you like just kind of campaigning for everybody on all sides?
I'm just trying to talk to candidates at a public forum.
Oh,
Sometimes
okay.
there's two good choices. You never know.
I know that.
So
I research all my candidates.
I asked Byron if he had heard of the Kansas Personal and Family Protection Act. It's the state law in Kansas regarding concealed carry. I would think as a police chief he's heard of that before, but he told me he had not. Maybe showing him the title of the document might jog his memory.
I would.
It
sounds to me like you're somebody who likes to trap people.
I'm trapped with like public laws. It's been for like 20 years right here.
You know, you are kind of out there. You know that.
I'm listening to the candidates and asking them questions about the things they say in public. I think more Kansans should do that. Byron, I'd love to share with you the KSA number of that bill that I mentioned earlier. If you take a photo with your phone.
See you guys. Be careful.
Bye, guys.
Here's the number, Byron.
Excuse me, I'm talking to him
Oh,
on a
okay.
private matter.
Have a good night, buddy.
All right, you don't want to read the law?
Too much time on
You're
your phone, I think.
you're a police chief.
You're interrupting my conversation. We're in a private conversation.
I have a feeling that you talk with him a lot, don't you? So you'll have plenty of opportunity to do so. Well, there we go. Johnson County Library.